And good evening, beautiful people. Not Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews doing his best to fill the chair, along with magic skeptic Dara. Good to meet you in person. I guess our paths have almost crossed a dozen times, but not quite. So tonight is kind of a serendipitous convergence. So it's an honor to meet you, brother. Welcome.
It's an absolute pleasure, Seth. It really is an honor to share the stage with you this evening, and I hope that together we can do a good job of filling those shoes that you referred to.
It's not, he wanted to be here, but Matt was actually, he was out. He was walking the Damascus Road, and there was white light from the sky, and there was music, I think some Yanni music or something, and a voice appeared, and I don't know, some kind of conversion took place. He may not be back. So you and I might have to carry this load for the rest
Hallelujah,
of the season.
brother.
Okay.
Hallelujah.
You have to forgive me, brother, because I'm in Oklahoma, and so I do love. Is it an Irish accent that I'm hearing, my friend, or
Certainly
is it Scottish? Because usually Scottish can be so thick that I struggle. I have to turn the captions on for some Scottish accents. Is that common, or is it just me? And am I an idiot?
I think it's common. I think all people struggle to understand accents that they're not familiar with. I've struggled to understand Scottish people. Hell, Seth, I've struggled to understand Irish people.
Well, I mean, I have a hard time with some Oklahomans, but that's a whole other thing. And I'm horrible at accents. It's probably offensive that I even try, but every time, and this is a Scottish thing, every time Rob Roy is on, which is one of my favorite films, there's this scene, I forget the actor's name, and he's telling a story. He's like, "You tell your men to throw down and I'll cut your throat." There's this sort of thing that he does. I'm like, I want to speak like that. Someone teach me how to do that,
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I will say in defense of the Irish, some of whom I don't even understand myself, the level of incomprehension doesn't even come close to that of certain theists and creationists. So, yeah. So I understand what they're saying. It's not the accent. It's just that the words coming out of their mouth don't make much sense. But yeah, there you
go. Americans on the world stage, right? I mean, are we just the punchline? Does everyone think it's just romper room, that we've lost our minds, that bring on the killer asteroid? I get the vibe. Like, I've spoken to some of my Canadian friends, right? I'm talking to Paul and Shannon and some of the others, and they're like, yeah, we wonder if maybe you're just circling the drain and we're hoping that you don't suck us all down into the abyss with you. Do you feel that when you watch what's happening in the United States?
Well, at risk of bringing up a sore subject, I think the whole world stood agog and aghast when you elected Donald Trump. So there's that.
No, I mean, when other people elected.
Yes. I should be more careful with my words. But yeah, it's that definitely didn't help the reputation. But as for the reputation overall, who am I to say? Man, I have no idea. There's probably some statistics somewhere on that subject, and yeah, who knows?
Where are you based now? Where do you live?
I live in the UK. I live in England because of work. Basically, Ireland is a small island nation, and I think our number one export, aside from Guinness, is people.
Is
the Irish diaspora. Yeah, the Irish diaspora is all over the world, and it's because Ireland, I think, as wonderful a country as it is, and I hope to move back there someday, the small island nation that it is struggles to employ all of its people or even house all of its people. There are very serious housing problems in Ireland, which, if you were more familiar with the situation in Ireland, you'd be, shocked at some of the details there. But in any case, I won't drone on and bore the audience with tales of Ireland.
I'm fascinated. Well, by the way, we're populating the switchboard. The phone number is on the screen, or there's a web link in the description if you want to just click and dial in. As I understand it, theist callers get priority, but we'll just talk to anybody who wants to talk to us. So dial in. We enjoy the chance to interact. What's the religious climate in Ireland? I mean, would you call it a religious country?
It's a fascinating question, and please understand before I say a word on the subject that I'm no expert. Just being a denizen of Ireland does not make one an expert on the subject. But what little I know tells me that Ireland's religiosity has declined significantly in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years even. And I think the referenda, if that is the plural, demonstrate that with considerable clarity. So we had a gay marriage referendum, and the Irish people voted by a landslide victory to legalise gay marriage. We had an abortion referendum, and the Irish people voted by a landslide victory to legalise the right to choose. And we had a blasphemy referendum, and again, in this trifecta of referenda, the Irish people voted by a landslide victory to abolish the blasphemy laws. And so those were three very big middle fingers to an Ireland that was once in the desperate clutches of the Catholic Church. And so, yeah, Ireland has definitely been secularizing and progressing, although when I use the word progress there, of course, I'm assuming a particular point of view, political point of view, that I would very much champion. And I was very proud of Ireland. I'm not, generally speaking, Seth, I wouldn't describe myself as a patriot. I feel like patriotism is more of a pernicious force than anything. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't admit to shedding a tear of joy on those three separate days. And so I think the clutches of religion in Ireland, I think those days are behind us. But if history has taught us anything, things ebb and flow back and forth. So who knows what the future holds? I certainly don't have a crystal ball, but as of right now, I think it's definitely going in the right direction. And I think the church pews demonstrate that as well. I remember reading statistics about the ever secularizing nature of Ireland and how numbers in church pews are plummeting and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's in my political, social, and philosophical point of view, things are going in the right direction vis-a-vis those matters at the very least. Not to say that Ireland is got a perfect batting average when it comes to all issues and subjects, but yeah.
When I was thinking, this was me, and I guess I was monumentally naive, but, as I saw the rise of the non-religious in the United States, and that rise continues, I thought, well, at some point, we'll probably become more like Britain, where there may be a Church of England, but people are not overtly religious. It would be uncomfortable to go up to someone on the street and say, "Can I tell you about my Lord and Savior?" It would be considered an intrusion. That's an accurate representation of the culture of the UK, right? I mean, no one is really wearing religion on their sleeves beyond some of the clerics at the highest perches. Is that right?
There's a complicated answer to that, and it's a double-edged sword, Seth. So in my anecdotal experience, sure, I've not seen much in the way of street preaching and that sort of thing, but there might actually be a bad reason for that, as opposed to a reason in relation to, progress or social development or something. It's because there's a law in the UK, or a set of laws known as the Public Order Act, and Section 5, this is something I've covered on my channel, which will be an affront to anybody who believes in freedom of speech. And I think the United States, if it's got one thing right, its laws and freedom of speech are something that I would personally very much support. But Section 5 of the Public Order Act in the UK makes it an offence to utter anything in public that would be considered objectionable to those around you. This includes any signposting or speech or anything of that nature. I covered one example on my channel, Seth, where a street preacher who was preaching about the sinfulness of gay marriage. Now, just to be clear, I think he's immoral. I think gay people should have the right to get married and be miserable like all of the other married people. I'm joking. That's just I have a fiance and I'm due to be wed. If I thought it was going to be that miserable, I wouldn't be in that position. It's just a joke. But in any case, he was preaching about the sinfulness of gay marriage. And he was hauled away by the police. And this guy was quite old. He was in his 70s or something. And the way they hauled him away, you would swear he was a terrorist or something about to commit a terrible crime. But he was hauled away for the crime of offending the sensibilities of people around him. Now, while I see my LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters as allies and people I support and love, and I would be more than happy to join them on the street to resist the preachings of this religious guy, I certainly don't think the right answer is to haul him off, arrest him, and charge him under Section 5 of the Public Order Act. But that's what's happening in the UK. And so there might be some more pernicious reasons, in my political opinion, Seth. I don't want to assume anything about your point of view on this. Maybe what I've said here will be deeply objectionable to you or the listeners. But in my political opinion, what happened to that preacher, immoral though he was, saying terrible things though he was, I think what happened to him was incredibly unpleasant, and I think it is to our detriment as a nation here in the UK that sort of thing happens. But
I think
what say
it's
you
totally
on that
fair. Like
sort of thing?
free speech laws can not only protect the speech that you like. Was it Penn Jillette who said the solution for bad speech is more speech?
I
I think
couldn't
I
agree
agree
more.
with that. And Christopher Hitchens did a lot of speaking about we have to allow the right to offend as much as we detest it and stand against it. But the
Yeah,
second we become sort of censors to anything that we disagree with, we are no longer supporters of free expression. And that gets sticky. And we have to, of course, reinforce the idea that we do advocate and stand with those who are the targets. And we live in a culture
exactly.
and a world where people, in order to look like or feel like heroes, they manufacture villains. And it's
Yeah,
cruel and it's harmful and it's destructive and it's tragic. It's real, but I agree with you. I don't think that the solution is, oh, they're being hateful, so now what, we punch them in the face, we assault them, or we imprison them. I think that
yeah.
way calamity lies. I want to come back while we're waiting on the switchboard to the word patriotism. I have some thoughts on this. Who was I speaking to? Oh, I was speaking to he was featured on the Ken Burns documentary series, the Civil War, no, the Vietnam War. Ken Burns had done like a 10-part series. And it is, I think, the best exploration into the Vietnam era that I have ever seen. And one of the stories that he told was the story of a man who had volunteered for military service. He was kind of an idealist. His name is John Musgrave. And he went in and he was horribly killed. He was shot through the chest. He should not have lived and somehow survived. And he came back, and through a course of his events, some surrounding his injury, some not, he became aware that the war itself made no sense. It was unjust. The people sending children off to be slaughtered were themselves, encased safely in the halls of power at the banquet table. And he saw the waste of it all and the horror of it all, and he became a war protester. And for this, he was vilified. But, John
Or
said that my patriotic duty, because I love my country and want to see it achieve the best version of itself, my patriotic duty was to criticize and condemn injustice. And I think maybe that's the difference between being a blind nationalist and a patriot. You could, like, I love the United States. I'm also grieved and horrified and desperately want to see it rescued from the insanity that I see when I log on to the world every day. But am I a I think that may be the patriotic thing to do. Not to say we're better than anybody else. Not to say that we shouldn't try to embrace the good. That we shouldn't think about our communal interest to a degree. But this idea that loving your country means you can't say that's stupid, it's crazy, it's harmful, it's destructive, it's immoral. I mean, I think that is the patriotic act. Anyway, I just want off on a tangent, Dar. So,
no,
but
we
when you
thus
said,
far go for it,
no,
Seth.
go ahead,
Finish your
brother.
thoughts. Sorry.
Go ahead. When you said patriotic, and I know I get that word I think people have really contaminated that word, because when you say it, I don't know about you, in the United States, I picture a jacked up lift kit truck with an eagle and an AR-15 on the rack in the back, and some guy smoking a Camel unfiltered with, I'm proud to be an American playing on the stereo through open windows. And that stereotype, it exists for a reason. Go ahead,
Yes.
Dara. Go ahead, take that and run with it, if you would.
Yeah, thus far, Seth, we are in violent agreement. We are in violent agreement. Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think some people kind of see patriotism almost as a synonym for blind obedience,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't matter what the country does, as a patriot, you're supposed to support it. That kind of just basically makes patriotism a synonym for cult. Because that's what people in a cult do, right? If you're in a cult, the only question you ask the dear leader when they ask you to jump is, how high, dear leader, right? That's what you do if you're a member of a cult. But if you're actually a functioning, independent human being with a moral compass and some basic tools of skepticism, well, then you should use those to perhaps arrive at a different conclusion if your reason tells you that the direction your country is going is abhorrent. And as you quite rightly point out, I think some people just view patriotism as blind obedience, and that, let's face it, history teaches us over and over and over and over again that blind obedience leads to mass graves. I'm sorry to put it so bluntly, but that is an undeniable lesson of history, is it not?
By the way, if you and I ever host a show together, like we branch off, I think it should be called Violent Agreement. You used that phrase, and I thought that would be a great show. Violent Agreement with Dara and Seth tonight at 7. I like the sound.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
I am doing a series of presentations around the country. I'm speaking in Denver on Saturday, and then I'm going to Fort Worth, Houston, Sarnia, Toronto, Lexington, Bentonville, a few other places. And in some of those cities, I'm doing a presentation that talks about identity beliefs and tribe beliefs. And I think that takes us back to tribal symbols. And, when we see the waving flag, some people, they rally around the colors, or they rally around another symbol, and it can be the gun, right? It can be the eagle, it can be the Bible. It shocks me though, when Donald Trump tear gases a crowd of people so that he can stand in front of a church he does not attend to brandish a Bible that he does not read.
Yeah.
That symbol is all that many of the ralliers, right? Those who respond to authoritarians, that symbol was all they really needed. They saw that, they had that swell in their heart, yes, man of God, and those who know how to weaponize tribal symbols, and those who know how to rally people through fear. I've noticed in my own work, Dara, that the people who claim divine protection, like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, right? The victory is won. This is the language of the believer. And yet they sit in their bunkers, peering over the ledge, terrified of everybody's coming for them. We've got the abortionists are coming, and they want to abort you in the, what'd Trump say, the 9.5 month. Good luck explaining the physics of that. We've got the socialists coming. We've got the immigrants coming. We've got the Marxists coming. We've got, Lil Nas X and his blood sneakers. He's coming for you. Everybody's coming for you, and the drag queens are coming. This is a terrified culture of people. I'm surprised they walk out the front door at night.
Yeah.
And I want to look them in the eye and say, for somebody who thinks that the most powerful creature, being, father figure, whoever in the universe, in the history of history, has your back, you don't strike me as a person of great confidence. And then they pray for me, and then they run out the door. Bless your heart.
Yeah, there's a real irony, Seth. There's a real irony, because these are the same people who are in the business, and they've turned it into a cottage industry, of referring to their political opponents as snowflakes, as people who are too sensitive, as people who are all too willing to engage in a victimhood narrative. And yet the case that you just laid out there demonstrates that very often it's actually the exact opposite. It's these people who are claiming the victimhood narrative, that they're the victims of secularism, they're the victims of atheism, they're the victims of the social justice warriors. Like you said, everybody is coming for them. It's kind of this siege mentality. And the irony of those to refer to others as snowflakes or having a victimhood narrative is actually just it's too much to bear.
I did a speech, gosh, has it been 10 years, on the satanic panic of the 1980s and 90s. And our parents were wigging about Ozzy Osbourne. They said Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac, she's practicing witchcraft on the stage.
Yep.
And Kiss, the metal band Kiss, I guess they're metal. KISS stands for Knights in Satan's Service. And the Procter & Gamble logo, when you buy Crest toothpaste, you are supporting an organization that is funding the Church of Satan. I mean, everything. There were so many stories like this. I mean, everything was evil. It was just crazy. And
the narrative hasn't changed.
I don't know. No, it hasn't. The satanic
now
panic continues today. Who I know drag queens would be at the top of the list these days. Trans
Sure.
people certainly have taken
Yep.
it in the teeth on the satanic panic. I wonder who else are they coming after? I know
Nicki Minaj
the
comes to mind, pop singer Nicki Minaj. I won't say the name of the song for fear of the monetization of this channel, but that song WAP, W-A-P, the listeners will know what I'm referring to. I see people on the right freaking out. It's a moral panic, right? Oh, the children! Won't somebody think of the children? You know, there's a real moral panic element to all of this, and it's identical. It's not even analogous. It's identical to the kind of stuff that you were talking about there with Kiss and other pop stars of the past, where there was a satanic moral panic about how the moral fiber of society is going to dissolve and the devil is going to take over. And it's insanity,
Well,
if you ask me, Seth.
if you are a marketer, though, how easily manipulated are these people for free press? When Sam Smith is at the Grammys and he comes out in the devil costume,
Yeah,
he knows he is going to
of
get
course he
so
does.
much mileage, free headlines, free publicity. He's going to be water
Yep,
cooler conversation all around the world. And he sits back and basks in the glow and laughs all the way to the bank. And I kind of have
yep,
to high five him for it. Hey, well done, well played. You know, if they are that
yep.
knee jerky, use it, use it.
Couldn't
Um,
agree more.
do I read the super chats as we go, or am I supposed to save them for the end? Because my first inclination is to just sort of read them as we go. Is there a hard and fast rule? I don't want to betray the spirit of the broadcast or offend the absent host today.
We
What's the
generally
mood?
do it at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
How do I find them all at the end? Are they in a queue somewhere, or am I massively scrolling?
I've got them in a queue, so when it's time, I will put up the little thing. I'll send you to that slide, and then I'll start sending them through as you read them.
Bless you, Saint Arden, keeper of the super chats. $10 to get your super chats read, and we will do that near the end of the show. Dara, you've listened to me enough. You want to listen to some callers and see what they bring to the table tonight, my friend?
I would love to. But just one last thing I'll say before we move to callers.
Hmm.
If any theists do call, don't think that tonight's going to be easy just because Matt isn't here. I think Seth and I are more than ready. Just want to put that warning out there.
Our strategy is a little bit different. What we do is through a soft voice and kindness, lull you into a false sense of security. And then when you least expect it, we literally, our heads spin around 180 degrees. And what happens next is I've got Rogan out of New York, pronouns he, him, a theist. Rogan, are you with me?
How's it going?
Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Rogan.
Thanks for having me. Hey. Yes, so I saw a talk you did. It must have been about a decade ago. I think it was titled something like Being a Christian May Be Taught Like an Idiot. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I did a speech in 2017 and wrote a book that released 3 years ago by the same title, Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot.
Yeah, exactly. So during that talk, I saw you mention that basically you came across that you were a Jesus mythicist, and you said that Jesus was based upon the Osiris death. Do you still believe that?
No, I never have once ever at any time said I'm a mythicist. I think I've said I don't know if there was a Jesus who that the God myth was based on. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure I care that much, but I've never said I'm a mythicist. But I did draw some comparisons. And for those, it was a different speech, I think. I don't know. It wasn't Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. I think it was a previous presentation where I was speaking about how the idea of a crucified God, a dying and rising God, and an atoning God for the sins of humanity, these were not new when the Christ myth came about. Much of this had already been done in previous mythologies, whether they were ripped directly from the earlier pagan deities or whether it was just a coincidence or part of the religious vernacular of the time. Dr. Josh Bowen has done a lot of writing and speaking about how there were genre gods. And so it was popular. My God is bigger than your God. He does the same thing that yours does, only better. My dad can beat up your dad, kind of thing. And so there were echoes of one God myth into another God myth. And that was the point I was making. And I think Inanna, the Egyptian god, came up, and Osiris. I think the Horus comparison is actually incorrect. The film The Zeitgeist got that wrong. But there are some legit. Perseus, he was born of a virgin and a human mother, that kind of thing. Go ahead. Oh, I have apparently lulled him into a deep trance, and he hung up the line. Please, Max. Was I droning on, Dara? Sorry about that.
I don't think so. What you said was rather succinct. Look,
well,
I'm not a.
It's possible maybe that when he realized that I was not a mythicist, then his question became.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. I think maybe he was calling to have a fight about mythicism, and when you said that you weren't actually a mythicist, I think he bowed out. But just one thing on that, I get that it's an important question. Obviously, if Jesus was a myth, and by the way, in academia, the word myth doesn't necessarily mean fake. I think that's important for people to remember. But leaving that aside for a moment, if we deploy the word myth in the sense that therefore it's fake, it's not true, like Santa Claus, the myth, or what have you, I get why that's important for a Christian to figure, because if Jesus wasn't real, then the whole religion is in the toilet. But even if Jesus was real, it still doesn't prove any of the claims. It doesn't prove that God exists. There could just be a guy who said some stuff and so on. So I've never really understood what Christians think they're gaining by having that debate. I usually just grant the existence of Jesus from the word go, and I don't see how that really is a problem for the atheist position, Seth. I don't know about you.
I think it's an interesting academic discussion. I don't like a lot of the venom. And of course, outrage is the currency of the internet. So if somebody goes online and says, I don't think that a real guy named Jesus ever existed, rather than saying, well, my perspective is a little bit different, and let me tell you why. Let's discuss this reasonably and see if we can pursue the best ideas. Does that happen? Almost never. Instead, somebody says, well, how do you think this all came about? And then everybody joins in and piles on. And then some dude will quote Caesar's Messiah and say, Caesar wrote the entire Bible according to, and then it just spins into oblivion. I find discourse is a real challenge, especially online. I've been working on exercises in my own life, Dara, to try to de-escalate, to try to find opportunities to use language that cause everybody to take a breath, and say, hang on just a second. I find that that's interesting. I may not agree. Let's try this. What do you think? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a hot one. Have you noticed that? Like mythicism and historicism it's hot. And I'm not sure exactly why people take it so personally. Weird.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily symptomatic of that discussion. It's more symptomatic of the internet, as you inferred. It just seems like the internet is a place that lacks nuance. However, it would be absolutely ridiculous and hypocritical of me not to acknowledge that I have absolutely partaken in that outrage internet culture. Some of my most popular videos are videos of me losing my shit.
Me too. So, I'm guilty.
Yeah, so I'm not going to sit here and moralize and pontificate because people are just going to take this clip of me pontificating and couple it with me having a freak out on one of my videos and then call me a liar and a hypocrite. And I'm just not having that happen. So I'll hold my hands up right away, brother. I am guilty.
We are works in progress. You and I were works in progress, right? And I can get my snark on. And sometimes I think, kind of hyper targeting, just coming in like a laser bomb sometimes has real utility, right? Sometimes it's okay to ridicule the ridiculous. But I think whenever we unnecessarily turn conversations, even disagreements on important issues, into just throwing shit over the wall at each other, nothing ever gets accomplished. Nothing ever improves. We're not changing the world. Everybody leaves frustrated. I find myself kind of disheartened a little bit by that. But guilty. Okay, you and I confess. You're right. You're right. I've done it. Let's see.
I am but a lowly sinner.
Your atonement. Yeah. What will your penance be, my child? Quinn, out of, I think it's Missouri, pronouns are they, them. Quinn, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am. How are you guys doing?
Well, thank
Great.
you for being here. What's on your mind?
Yeah, so I see a lot of theists call into these shows or just in conversation, they'll bring up their own personal experience of supernatural events, be it a prophecy or a miracle or whatever. They always think if they can rule out all the natural explanations for it, then it's proof of God. Is it actually? Because I'm not sure if it is.
Dara, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. I would argue that this is kind of a fallacious way of reasoning. Just because we've ruled out all of the natural explanations that we're currently aware of does not mean that therefore the supernatural is the explanation. As far as I'm aware, if I'm thinking this through correctly, and I'm thinking on the spot, this is essentially a textbook argument from ignorance fallacy, which is the fallacy wherein somebody assumes that something is true because nobody has proven otherwise, or vice versa. And so, by way of analogy, if I see a strange object in the sky, and when I say strange, all I mean by that is an unidentified object. I can't figure out what it is. It's T minus 30 seconds before a person who lacks skepticism announces that it's aliens, right? Now, if I say, but it could be a satellite, but let's say we look at the satellite coordinates, we check where all the satellites are, and it turns out there was no satellites in that portion of sky on that particular time and that particular night. Okay, we've ruled out satellites. Maybe it was some kind of aerial flying object. Maybe it was a plane, but then let's say we could go and speak to the all of the flight towers in the world, look at all the logs. Turns out there was no plane in the sky in those coordinates at that time. You get where I'm going with this, Quinn, right? So we could rule out all of those natural explanations. And please notice that we never act. And by the way, just to be clear, obviously aliens wouldn't necessarily be a supernatural explanation. So this isn't a one-to-one analogy, but it'll serve to make the point. Please notice that even after we've ruled out, say, satellites and planes, and maybe we've ruled out weather balloons and so on and so forth, if we've ruled out all of the normal, say, explanations we can think of, that doesn't then get us to the place where we can say, well, I guess we've ruled out all of the explanations we can think of, therefore it must have been aliens. That is a textbook argument from ignorance, and theists engage in this exact same reasoning when it comes to God. And no, it doesn't get you to God. It doesn't get you anywhere. The only place it actually gets you to, if we were being epistemically honest and humble, is, okay, we don't know what it is then. And then we got to hold our hands up and say we don't know. But the problem is theists aren't in the business of saying I don't know, are they, Quinn? Theists are in the business of telling us that they know a great many things that nobody really knows. It's just that people claim to know them, right? So I think it's an absolutely fallacious way to proceed in any conversation, Quinn. So whether that be God, aliens, or what have you.
Makes perfect sense. Quick follow-up question, I'll be done. So it seems to me that to actually demonstrate the supernatural, they'd have to somehow peel back the veil of the universe and be able to demonstrate that it's possible, or some kind of testing or evidence. Does it sound kind of correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by peel back the veil of the universe, Quinn. So perhaps if you could offer us some clarity on that, that would be helpful.
Okay, we are necessarily in time and space. I can't conceive of a way to look beyond the universe. A concept that makes sense to me. I just chose some verbiage.
Let me see if I'm understanding. Allow me to try to restate, and you tell me if I'm on the mark or close. Is your statement that a supernatural intervention in the natural world would still have a connecting point, right? The magical versus the natural. So it's something that we should see and be able to verify, observe, measure, test. So even those who say, well, it happens beyond nature, it is extra natural. If it's affecting the natural world, there should be a point of convergence. We should be able to observe the supernatural meeting the natural world. Would that be a correct representation of what you were trying to say? God, I've bored all of our callers into.
Please don't tell me
apparently
we've lost another call.
Quinn has had a mild stroke. Paramedics are on the way, Quinn. I want you to just follow my voice. I'm sorry. Are you with us, my friend? I still see Quinn on the switchboard. I'm going to.
So it looks like Quinn's still connected. I know Quinn's not doing a web caller, but there is a bug where when people, if they have their phone on and close to their face, their phone will go asleep eventually, and that will mute the audio. So you kind of have to like pull your phone back and tap it to wake it back up. Give that a shot, Quinn. But if you're not back in a couple seconds, we're probably just gonna have to move on.
Who knows that? Who knows this information about this bug and how to fix it?
It's only because vMix, like, you could set up a call system that would tell your phone to stay on because it's on like an active page, but vMix doesn't do that, so it unfortunately interrupts the signal a lot.
I'm going to start asking Arden just unrelated questions about everyday life. Like, Arden will become my Wikipedia if I just have a question about how to fix something around the house. Coffee maker, the mix is not right. Is it the grind? Am I using like distilled water? How do I make my coffee? I'm just going to call Arden, and hopefully Arden will fix it. And Quinn has disappeared. Any further thoughts on this whole thing? I was talking to Dr. Julian Mussolino. He wrote a book called The Soul Fallacy. And he was talking about people who speak in terms of this extra natural, Dr. Dan Dennett called it the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious factor. It's this thing that is not the mind, it is not the brain, it is your soul. It drives who you are, what you think, what you do, and why. But it cannot be seen or smelled or touched or measured in any way. And, you know, he's a neuroscientist, and he was like, well, even if something like that existed, and there's no evidence that it does, there would still be a point of connection where that extra natural affects the physical brain. And you would be able to do an MRI and be able to see what's going on as the supernatural forces impact the natural mind. And that is something that we simply do not see. And it's a conversation about the soul and the supernatural that I think many people miss. They just give the people a pass and say, well, you know, it's supernatural. But if it's affecting the world we live in, there will be some kind of a crossover, a point of contact. Your thoughts, Dara?
Yeah, I think it was Descartes who famously thought that that connecting point that you're referring to, Seth, was the pineal gland. If I'm remembering that correctly, I'm sure our listeners this evening will correct me if I'm mistaken there. I think it was Descartes who said that, but obviously that's not the case. The problem here, and I can, if there are theists watching, I can imagine them pulling their hair out, because what they'll say, and this is the usual apologetic, you foolish atheists expecting physical evidence for something that's non-physical. Clearly, science and empiricism, they're not the best tool for this job. You cannot use, I was covering an apologist recently on my channel who said, it's like taking a tape measure and expecting somebody to measure your weight, right? So you're trying to use a tool that's rooted in materialism to investigate the immaterial. And they'll use this as a gotcha. So, therefore, you know, you're being silly, you're engaged in a fool's errand. But my response, and admittedly, I'm actually quoting somebody who commented on my channel in the last 24 hours. I thought they put this beautifully. I'm afraid to say and ashamed to say that I've forgotten their name. But they said, they put it this way. They said they love to flip it around and ask the theist in this situation, well, what is the right tool for the job then? If science and empiricism isn't going to be the thing that verifies the existence of the soul or God or any other supernatural woo, well, then what is the right tool? Is it credulity? Is it blind faith? Like, what is it? What is the mechanism by which we determine the existence of the so-called supernatural? One additional thought on that. I'm moving in the direction of avoiding the label of the supernatural, because some people will point out, if we do discover a mechanism for interacting with the supernatural and demonstrating its existence, wouldn't that then just be subsumed under our knowledge and under the bracket of what is natural if we understood the mechanisms and so on? So I try not to think about this in terms of supernatural versus natural. I just try to think about it in terms of what has been demonstrated and what hasn't been demonstrated. And the beliefs that are under the umbrella term of supernatural, things like souls, gods, and so on. None of those things had been demonstrated materially or otherwise. And so until some kind of demonstration, if it's not going to be empirical, I don't know what it's going to be, but that's not my job to figure out. Until there's some kind of demonstration, well, then I have no rational justification for believing any of this stuff. So those are just some rudimentary thoughts on the topic, Seth. I don't know if I've gone off on a tangent there. Feel free
No,
to
I think that's
rope me back in
honestly,
at any point if I'm...
I enjoy listening to you speak. I find it, I don't know, does anyone else find it kind of soothing and real? It's like ASMR. I find myself totally calm and centered.
Get
So
out of
that's-
here with that
No.
delicious voice you have. Are you kidding me?
I think, though, going back to, was it Quinn who talked about the personal experience aspect of belief? That's a tough one, right? Because it is, most people consider it to be the unfalsifiable claim. You'll never tell me it never happened. I saw a vision. I heard the voice of Jesus. I had a dream. I was carried away in the spirit to visit my grandmother at the pearly gates, and she said she'll be waiting for me one day. And we understand there are so many mechanisms by which the brain sort of, does a lot of wacky stuff. You ever speak to somebody who thinks that every dream has meaning? And I tend to think that the brain is just a blender. It's just a combination of life experience and memory and imagination and who knows what. Like someone tell me, oh, I had a dream that I was wearing a Chuck E. Cheese costume, swimming in an Olympic-sized pool filled with cottage cheese. And I wake up and they're like, what's that mean, Seth? And I'm like, what the fuck would it mean? Why does every dream have to have meaning? But I think those people who make these assertions that I had an experience, it happened in my perception, therefore my perception is real, that's a little bit of a tough one. And the only way around that I have found, and I'll bet you've got a better answer, is to do the comparative religions thing, the straight epistemology thing. So if it's a Christian, they say, Jesus took me on a walk and told me this. I'll say, if we were sitting at a table and a devout Muslim said that Muhammad appeared and took him on a walk and said this, would you then accept their faith, their belief by faith, their personal experience? Would you give it equal weight? And I've never found someone who gives it a direct and quick yes. Would there be a better approach to that from your perspective? How do you handle the personal experience? It happened to me and you'll never tell me otherwise crowd.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because if something feels real to the subjective experiencer, an outside party is always going to be perceived as pretty uncompelling when they start naysaying. Right? So, like just right now, I have a very powerful subjective experience right now that I'm sitting here having a conversation with the illustrious Seth Andrews. And it would be very difficult to convince me right now that that isn't the case. And I think we need to extend some kind of olive branch to people who have had, quote, religious experiences, because some people have quite clearly, I'm not in the camp of saying that all of them are just liars and they're just making it up. There are definitely some liars among the bunch because there are financial incentives, attention incentives, and so on. There's going to be deceivers in the crowd. There is in every possible group of people. Fine. But most people who have religious experiences where they say Jesus appeared to them in a dream, or they saw a ghost, even to move away more tangentially to religion, they saw a ghost in their house or something. I'm happy to just take them at their word that they've genuinely experienced something that they feel is real and that they're honestly reporting it to the best of their capacity. And yeah, it's very difficult to convince them that what happened isn't real. All you can do is things like you said, Seth. I mean, I'm no expert on this. All I would draw attention to was, like you said, people who have had other experiences, maybe experiences that are contradictory. But aside from that, all you can do is make people aware of some of the naturalistic possibilities, making people aware of things like temporal lobe epilepsy, TLE, which is a malady of the brain which is highly correlated with religious and supernatural experiences. You could point them in the direction of the research of, I think it's Michael Persinger. His second name is definitely Persinger. I think his first name is Michael. He did the God helmet, right? Where he was able to stimulate religious experiences in the minds of most, but not all, of his test subjects. It famously didn't work on Richard Dawkins, for example. But yeah, all you can do is point people in the direction of these evidences, and then they're either going to take it seriously or they're not. And there's not really a whole pile you can do about it. I don't know of a mechanism like a knockdown argument against somebody who's had a powerful subjective experience. I mean, I've had powerful subjective experiences. I had an experience in my room when I was a kid where I saw an old lady who was a hag. It's the hag archetype. This old lady, terrible looking and in a white dress, who has evil intent. Actually, I think best conceptualized and visualized and put to film by, I want to get the movie right, was it The Conjuring Part 1, where the old hag is on, or even in the Insidious movies, the old woman in the mirror, that kind of image. And to this day, it feels so real to me. I can't tell my subjective sense of self that it wasn't real what I experienced, but because I'm skeptical and I've looked into the evidences and so on, I no longer believe that that's the case, but I can still see it in my mind's eye, and yet I don't believe in ghosts or terrible apparitions and so on. So yeah, I don't know if there's a knockdown argument set, and if there is one, I'd love to be made aware of it. And perhaps if any of our listeners are aware of one, they can jump into the comments and let us know of a better argument against this kind of subjective experience angle, and maybe we can use that in the future, but yeah, it's a difficult one for sure.
Get back to the calls, and just one thing about having a longer form show as we get a chance to sort of take these bunny trails and talk about these things between calls. But I will get back to the switchboard, and the phone number and the web link to dial in are there. I see 2 callers in the queue, so we've got a little bit more room if somebody else wants to have a conversation. I was talking to Brian Dunning. He's a skeptic who does a lot of exploration into claims about UFOs and aliens. And I think this relates. And he had mentioned that in certain cultures, there was the vision, the experience people had that they would wake up in the middle of the night and there was an old woman, the hag, and she was sitting on their chest, crushing their lungs, and they could not breathe. And it was essentially sleep paralysis. But the cultural background had informed the perception that it wasn't just a figure, it was the hag. It was the old woman who had visited them in the night and sat on their chest. And that's where you get the term haggard. You hadn't slept well. It's because the old woman was crushing your lungs. You look haggard today. And he was talking about how when it comes to things like the experiences of UFO sightings, aliens, etc., the whole little green men thing didn't take off in this country until somebody brought it to light. It had to become part of the cultural language. And then all of a sudden, when somebody had an experience, it just conveniently started to look like something that had already informed pop culture or the culture in general. And I think, those biases exist in religion. So if I see a white light and I hear music in a dream, or I've got hypoxia or something else is going on, I'm probably going to say, well, that white light, that figure is going to be my God, right? The God I'm familiar with or the God of my culture. So if I'm a Christian, it's not going to be Allah, Krishna, Wotan, it's not going to be Odin. It's probably going to be Yahweh, Jesus. And I find that's interesting how those things that are baked in previously inform how we translate and interpret our experiences. I'm just babbling, Dara, but that's just my 2 cents on that. I've got...
I think you're right, though.
Sam out of Texas. Sam is a theist. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm a Team Christian, and I was thinking about your earlier discussion that you had, and it came to my mind that about patriotism and everything, the way America truly was founded under God and as a Christian nation, and not only America, but when you really think about it, the entire West altogether. I mean, the first king of England, Athelstan, was a deep devout Christian, and he was the first king of England back in he was 27 or 37, something like that. So my point is that it's true to today how the way you get a lot of people who go against America being a Christian nation. No, it was never a Christian nation. It was never a Christian nation. But it's evident today when you look at like Trump supporters who are Christian, they're, God, family, country, the churches, how they, always pray for their officers and soldiers that go off to war, and and they're patriots. They want to vote in the elections, and they're America first, and they wave their flags and they celebrate. And it's always like the left, either the atheist or not really, because or liberals, whatever, atheist liberals. They're always like against, America and even patriotism because they call it a cult, like the England was saying. I forgot his name, but the point is that this country is evident today that it still is a country, a Christian nation, because if it was up to non-Christians in the left, they would name America something completely different. They believe in open borders. They don't care about, they're humanist. They don't believe in direction. They just do whatever you want type of mentality. So I find that that's very, interesting in today's culture. And I also wanted to point one more thing out too. I forgot your name too, but how you're like so surprised and amazed how the way, I know her name because I heard the show before, Arden, I think was the name, how she was saying that if you keep your phone close to your face, that it turns off and you can't speak. And you're baffled and amazed and, like, how in the world did you know this, Arden? I'm gonna come to you for everything that I need to know because you're so smart and brilliant. And my thing is, you don't even know how to work a phone. And you want to know how the way the world was created? And because you don't know the way God created the world, you don't even know how the way a phone works. And still, you don't believe in God until you figure everything out, until you figure out how the way God created absolutely everything. Listen, let me give you an example. You can have yourself a car, okay? They could give you the study, the blueprints, how to make every single piece of that car, the motor, the engine, even the oil that goes into the car, everything to make. They could teach you this for 10 years, and I'll tell you what, you'll still fail. You will not be a doctor in how to make a car. So if you don't even know how to make a car, you don't know how to make an airplane, you don't know how to make a cell phone, why do you need to know how the way the entire world was made in order to believe it?
Okay, Sam.
In order to believe in God.
I'm going to jump in here. I've given you plenty of rope. I'm speaking to Arden as a friend with real affection and a big wink. And
can you please say
that may not have translated.
Because that was very soothing for me.
That may not have translated, but I was speaking, as they say, facetiously. But yes, I do understand that, yes, the technology of phones has been developed through proven science, and I know how phones work. So, but in my defense, I'm going to just toss that out there. Can you do me a favor? Dara, I don't want to Bigfoot you real fast or walk on you, but I'm teed up with a few things, and I want to begin. And then, would that be all right? And then I'll just tee you up. Can you provide for me one invocation of God? Is God mentioned any place at all in the United States Constitution, the governing document of the entire nation? Where's God? Is there one written example of the word God in the Constitution?
In the federal note, in God we trust.
In the United States Constitution, is there one mention of God?
This is a fact. 95% of everyone we won't say fact because nobody was around 250 years ago, but 95% of this country claim to believe in Jesus Christ.
Hey,
now
Sam, do me a favor.
Of course.
I'm going to ask you a question. The same question I asked just a second ago. Is the word God anywhere in the United States Constitution, the governing document of the United States?
I'll be honest. It's been a while since I read the Constitution, so I couldn't tell you.
Well, that's cool. I mean, I received that. Do me a favor, go back at word 1, paragraph 1, read the whole thing. And if you find the word God, have your people contact my people. Now, I'm going to give you a list of bullet points. I don't want to gish gallop this, but I can throw it out. You can rewind and you can review and you can fact check me. I'll begin by saying, do not take my word for this. Verify it for yourself. God does not appear anywhere in the United States Constitution. Not all of the founders were Christian. Some, like Thomas Jefferson, were in fact deists. So I'm going to pull you back away from the transmitter or the microphone of your phone. Pull your phone back because I'm hearing you breathe and I'm kind of getting a little hot. That's a little exciting.
It's hot in Texas.
Thomas Jefferson
but I'm sitting by the pool with
a razor blade. He took a knife and he sliced out all the supernatural verses in the Christian New Testament. That book, called The Jefferson Bible, is on display right now at the Smithsonian. You can tour it and see it. Why would Jefferson pull out all the supernatural stuff out of the New Testament if he thought Jesus was actually a miracle worker in the supernatural sense, if I can beg Dara's indulgence on that word? If you read the Treaty of Tripoli, which was an agreement that we were putting together with Libya for shipping lanes, they were worried that we were going to have colonizers come in and try to make Christians out of the residents of Libya. We assured them, no, we just want to use your shipping lanes. And so the Treaty of Tripoli was written. It bears this sentence: the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. One of the signatures for that document was none other than founding father John Adams. When
Sam,
Thomas Jefferson
you gotta
was...
take the mic away from your mouth. Sorry, Seth. Sam, could you take the mic away
No.
from your mouth? We're still getting a lot of breathing sound. It's very disruptive. Thank you, Sam.
I thought it was
Sorry, Seth.
engagement. Maybe this was like just interest. So thanks for that. There was a concern by the Danbury Baptists. Whenever the country was relatively new, they were worried that the Congregationalist Baptists were going to exert undue authority, and it was going to become their country instead of the country for everyone. And Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter of response. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, there will forever be a wall of separation between church and state. Now, that's a quote from Thomas Jefferson. So this idea that we are a church and not a pluralistic democracy simply doesn't jive with the reality of what our founding fathers founded. Some were religious, but their personal religious belief has nothing to do with whether or not they wanted a secular democracy. The American experiment was that. State and church separated, one protected from the other. And that's simply the reality of it. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up for yourself. It's interesting stuff. Anything else, Sam?
Yeah, you're misunderstanding what it is that I'm saying. Is that the people who did the experiment of America were Christian. It doesn't mean that they need to put this into their constitution. It's like, for instance, today, you got the Senate, you got the Congress. I'm sure there's many Christians that are in the Senate and the Congress, and I'm sure there's many that aren't. Now, some would say none of them are because they're a bunch of, cheats, but I'm not here to say anything like that. But you have professing Christians, you have who are not. Yet it is America. Right, what I'm telling you is that the ones who want to stand for America are the ones who are believers in God. The ones who want to destroy America with open borders.
Look, I didn't realize Sean Hannity had called the show. It's almost an honor to talk to you, Sean. Anyway, love the fiction that you produce on your primetime broadcast. This idea that only the evil atheist or the heathen seculars, it's only us who want this wall of protection enforced is crazy. Some of my allies in the fight for the Establishment Clause of the Constitution are devout Christians. I work with Amanda Tyler of the Baptist Joint Committee. She founded Christians Against Christian Nationalism. I deal with socialist. He's a social studies sociologist. Jesus, I had a total brain fart. Andrew Whitehead, who is a devout believer. And he thinks that religion needs to be a personal expression, not a government edict. There are so many other people who are devout believers, but we line up and say that America is not a church. And honestly, you're going to have to, substantiate this claim that anybody who doesn't want a state church somehow isn't patriotic or doesn't love their country. I mean, I live in this country. You just told me that I don't love the United States and want to see it achieve its best. Is that what you mean?
No, what I was saying is that the other gentleman there who said that being a patriot is a cult is the reason why I was kind of, interested in calling, because I'm just telling you what you could see with your own eyes. We don't need to, think this way or that way. Just look at what you see. What you see is people who support Trump. They're made fun of. Yes, go ahead.
Hang on, Sam. And then Dara, I'm going to give it to you. This
Yeah.
idea that people are painting their bodies with the images of Trump when they are putting golden statues at the Conservative Political Action Committee and having their photographs taken, some are kneeling at its feet to pray. There are people who agree that Trump, when Trump said he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and people would still love and support him. This is cult behavior. It's straight up authoritarianism. So I don't think it's unfair to look at what we call Trumpism or Trump cult and see cult characteristics at play. Dara, go ahead. I'm just going to hang back and let you go. I've taken enough time.
Yeah, no, I just want to clarify one thing, and then I'll kick it back over to you, Seth, because Sam has brought up twice now my cult reference from earlier in this episode, and he has now misstated it twice. So I want to correct Sam and correct the record. So I did not say that all patriots are cult members. If you recall, and if you go back and listen to the conversation, Sam, Seth and I were specifically having a conversation about how best to define the word patriot. And Seth and I, if I recall correctly, both agreed that a true patriot is a person who stands up and says when their country is doing something wrong, and that a poor man's version of a patriot, the idiotic definition of patriot, is that of the person who engages in blind obedience. So I've got one question for you, Sam, to test whether or not you are the blindly obedient so-called patriot. I wouldn't call you that. Or if you're the patriot in the sense that Seth and I agreed a person is a patriot. So here's the question, Sam. If the United States government in the morning started rounding up Jews and putting them in concentration camps, would you agree with them, or would you stand up and say that the government is doing something wrong, that you disagree with the direction your country is going? Over to you, Sam.
Well, I never said that I was a patriot. What I said is that it's funny when you see the patriots of America, they always say that they're God, family, country. They go to church. I'm telling you what they're doing. I'm looking at
Sam,
it as a
Sam,
third
you got to answer some questions here. I'm sorry for cutting across, but I'm going to cut across if you don't answer the question, because you did the same with Seth, and I
follow
can't
Christ.
allow this. So I'm going to ask you one more time. If the government started rounding up Jews and putting them in concentration camps, would you agree with the government, or would you resist? Would you say that this is wrong? Would you stand up and speak out against it? That is my question to you.
King is Jesus. My king is God. So I wouldn't be doing
Sam,
that.
would you stand up and speak out against it or not? Would you? So am I to interpret that as yes, you would stand up against it? Okay, great. Well, then, if you
Sam, do me a favor. Back off your phone.
No greater love.
Back off your phone. Hey, Sam, back off of your phone 3 inches. All right? And just hold it back here just a little bit, and I think it's going to make everything a little bit smoother. Go ahead, Dara.
So with that said, Sam, then you and I are talking about more or less the same thing. All I said earlier in this conversation is that anybody who engages in blind obedience to their country is a member of a cult. That's what I meant when I referred to a cult. And you've come on here to try and suggest that I've made a broader comment about people being supportive of the United States as being cult members. I did not say anything of the like or anything of the sort. And so I just wanted to correct the record there. But one other thing I'll say before I hand it back over to Seth. You seem to have coupled atheism or secularism, and they are very separate concepts, by the way. But you seem to have coupled atheism with a whole load of policy prescriptions, like open borders. You do realize that atheism is a single perspective, like it's a single issue thing. Atheists are people who are not convinced in the existence of God. That's it. You could be an atheist and be open borders. You could be an atheist and be closed borders. You could be an atheist and be vegan, or you could be an atheist and want to eat meat. You could be an atheist and be literally anything else. It's like a jigsaw puzzle piece that fits in any section of the puzzle, right? This idea that being an atheist means that you're open borders or anything else, it just seems to me that you have this, like, you've taken a whole lot of stuff and you've just mashed it together and just tossed it out here for us to chew on. And the reality is that atheism has absolutely nothing to do with anything you just said. It's a single perspective on a single issue. And so I don't really get the entire thrust of this call. And yeah, I'm just kind of at a loss for words here. So I don't know if you want to respond, Sam, or Seth. Would you like to add to that in any way before Sam responds? But just consider me
Sam just a little more a few more seconds. Sam, you want to follow up to anything Dara's?
Yeah, I'm puzzled, Sam. I'm puzzled.
Yeah.
I don't know what the goal here is.
I'll just end with this, is because I've been listening to this show, I'd say, for about a couple of years, off and on. I'd say I'm not a religious listener, but the point is I've heard Matt. I know his policies. He's open border, pro Biden, all that, and everyone who he's had on here as a guest, whenever he's on his political rant, is always the same with him. They agree with him. I never hear anyone disagree with him. And that's the reason why I come across as atheist. Now, I know that liberals are usually, liberals don't come out as atheists. They're on TV and everything, but they're the same in the sense of progressive, what I would say, policies, no borders, legalize all immigrants, and so on, this and this and that. Which is, I mean, I don't have any problem with legal immigrants. That's totally fine. But I'm just talking about the millions that are coming across the border. Okay, so, but the issue is that that's where I'm coming across, because you guys are the platform. I mean, you guys are probably one of the biggest platforms of atheists. That's the only reason you're like the only one I even really listen to. But if I choose to. But the point is that everyone who I hear comes on here always talks about the policies of Joe Biden and how messed up America is. It's just all garbage, and it's all messed up and blah blah blah. And that's why I just thought it was funny, because when you look at the other side, they're the ones that are always from the church. They say that the church, they're all crazy Christians. They love America and hate everyone else. And that's the only reason why I say it's the proof is in the pudding that this is still a Christian nation. Can you imagine 250 years ago how the founding was, when 95% of this country said they were Christian? Another thing that you should check on, Darren, is that
Sam, stop. Stop. Before we get to the other thing, right? We're getting dangerously close to Gish Gallop territory, right? So let's just deal with one thing at a time, okay? So you seem to be very persuaded by this idea that if the preponderance of a group of people are X, then therefore the country is also X. That isn't a good definition as far as I'm concerned. So if the vast majority of Americans are Christian, if you want to use that, I mean, you can define words whatever way you want. It sounds to me like your definition of a so-called Christian country is a country where the majority of the denizens self-identify as Christian. I don't think that's a good definition of what a Christian country is. I think a better definition of a Christian country is if that country is a Christian theocracy. Now, we can just disagree on definitions there. And if you want to use your definition, that's fine. Well, then I guess America is a Christian country, because as far as I'm aware, I haven't looked at the demographics recently. I think Christians are still the largest religious group. If not the largest group overall. I'm sure Seth will correct me if I'm mistaken there. But if you want to use that definition, then fine, America is a Christian nation. But Seth literally read to you, almost verse by verse, the founding document and other various pieces of evidences to do with the founding fathers, demonstrating to you beyond reasonable doubt, with the encouragement for you to go and look this up yourself, that the founding documents and the founding fathers of the United States very clearly wanted to create a nation that separated church and state. So that is why I wouldn't view America as a quote-unquote Christian nation. But if you're just playing a semantic word game where your definition of a Christian nation is a nation where the majority of its denizens are Christians, well then we're just playing word games here. Your definition is different from my definition, and I don't know where that gets us. My biggest question here would be, so what? I don't care if the majority of people are Christians necessarily, so long as they're not jamming it down kids' throats in school, so long as they're not taking away people's right to medicine and their right to choose, so long as people don't have pogroms committed against them, so long as we can live side by side peacefully, and you can live your life how you want to live it, worship in whatever church you want to worship in, so long as you keep that to yourself and don't infest my home with it or jam it down my future children's throats and so on and so forth, then we can live happily. And it seems, given what Seth has said, that that's exactly what the founding fathers had in mind. So it does seem rather ridiculous to me that I'm sat here listening to a soliloquy from somebody telling me that it's a Christian nation when you keep saying the proof is in the pudding. Well, the pudding, as far as I can tell, Sam, is one of separation of church and state. It's one of secularism. So I don't know. Did I get anything wrong there, Seth? Am I mistaken?
I think I'm in violent agreement. with you. Just violent agreement, to go back to that term and the future title of our
Coming soon.
broadcast. Sam, I think we've spent 20 minutes with you. I appreciate the call. We're going to move on, maybe comment further, but I wish you the best and thank you. Okay.
All right.
All right. I think I'm most struck in that call by broad generalizations of, well, first of all, I'd like to hear Matt respond to the charge that Matt wants open borders. I'm sure Matt Dillahunty would probably want to clarify on that, because I don't think I've ever heard of anything of the kind. What I would guess Matt would have is the same thing that you and I have, is we resist the dehumanization of immigrants, whether they are here legally or undocumented or whatever, and this idea that they have become kind of a convenient villain for people who they're coming for you. We're back. We've gone full circle. The Hannibal Lecters are coming over the border, the murderers and the rapists, and they both want to drain the welfare system and take your job somehow all at the same time. They're just another other with a capital O, and I'm tired of seeing them treated like they are less than human. And I think that would probably be more along what Matt Dillahunty would say, but I'll let him defend himself if the question ever comes up. But did you notice that he talks in these wild generalities about whole groups, people groups, political groups, atheists, etc.? We all do this, and we all think that, as if we all went to a big Star Chamber meeting in the basement, and we all just decided we are all going to agree on issue X, Y, and Z. We all agree on borders. We all agree on drugs. We all agree on the death penalty. We all agree on healthcare. We all agree on foreign policy. I mean, these are wildly unsubstantiated and hugely oversimplified statements. And I was struck by that. I'm sure you were as well, Dara.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, even if I just granted it for the sake of conversation, that there are statistical prevalencies. Yeah, there are no doubt statistical prevalencies amongst groups. I'm sure if we were to take a random sampling of 100 Christians from the population, we'd probably find, depending on the state, let's say we took a random sampling of 100 Christians from the Bible Belt somewhere in the USA. I'm pretty sure if we were to line them up against a wall and ask them, are they pro-life or pro-choice, the majority of them would probably be pro-life. If you take 100 atheists from California and line them up against a wall and ask them, are they pro-life or pro-choice, most of them are probably going to be pro-choice, right? There can be statistical prevalencies amongst various communities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's integral to that philosophical point of view. It might be in the case of Christianity, because there are quotes in the Bible: before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and I knit you together in your mother's womb, and created in imago Dei, the image of God. You can certainly get a pro-life message from the Bible, so long as you ignore all of the genocidal, maniacal killing that God is getting up to. But that's not true on the inverse when it comes to atheists. There's nothing in atheism that ties you to a pro-choice point of view. There is no atheist doctrine. There's no atheist holy book or 10 commandments. What I find with atheists, while there might be statistical prevalencies, and maybe most of them are pro-choice or whatever, the key point I was trying to make is that, and what I find with atheism, is that it has nothing necessarily to do with any of these topics. That's the point I tried to make. You could be an atheist and be pro-life, or be pro-choice. You could be one or the other. Nothing about being a pro-life atheist, and sorry to shock you, Sam, and I know he's gone now, but there are in fact pro-life atheists. And I think Christopher Hitchens was one of them. He only mentioned it once or twice in his career, but when he actually verbalized his thoughts on the pro-life issue, he seemed to lean in the direction of pro-life, and anybody who's interested can look that up. The point I'm making is there's nothing about being a pro-life atheist or being an open borders or closed borders atheist that has no connection to atheism. Right? You're no less an atheist if you're open borders. You're no less an atheist if you're closed borders. You're no less an atheist if you're pro-life, pro-choice. Like atheism, as I said, it's like the infinitely malleable puzzle piece. It can fit with any view other than that of theism, basically. You could even be an atheist and be a Buddhist. You could be an atheist and believe in the soul, so long as that soul concept isn't connected to any god. Being an atheist just means that you're not convinced in the existence of a god or gods. That's it. But Sam was trying to connect atheism to all of these disparate hodgepodge of ideas, and yeah, I just don't know how somebody gets to that level, Seth. I I suppose it's a bit mean spirited to be still speaking about Sam when he's gone. But yeah, I said it while he was on the air. To be fair, I'm puzzled. There you go.
No, I think it's fair. I think it's an issue that we need to be speaking about more. I was honored to be featured in an Al Jazeera English piece, a video profile on YouTube Atheists. And, I'm at the point in my activism where I'm sort of like the grandfather figure. So they interview all of the young guns who are really out there doing all the great work. And then they need some old heritage dude who's been around long enough. And they're like, and let's talk to Seth. And I'm like, back when I was a child, and I come in and I talk about it from that point of view. But the producers they use the phrase in the narration about the atheist worldview. And I remember when I saw the produced piece, the first thing I did was drop him an email. And I said, great piece. I think you were very fair. By the way, atheism is not a worldview. Now, my rejection of gods or my disbelief in gods may inform how my value system is made. The fact that I don't believe in gods and monsters may lead into more humanistic things. And, I may connect dots in other ways, but it doesn't guarantee anything. Atheism is not a worldview. And there's this other thinking, even among skeptics and atheists, that atheism guarantees critical thinking and that we're always the smartest people in the room. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if you'll pardon the expression, I met a flat earth atheist. I was in Chicago, and I think I was doing a speaking event, and somebody came up, and they seemed to me like they were like super, one of those engineering minds. They just had that, all the gears were working. You feel like they could draw a schematic kind of a thing. And then he proceeded to begin to tell me why the earth is flat, and all of the world space agencies and all world governments and people in the International Space Station and meteorology and everybody else apparently are all in on a big hoax. And I thought to myself, this is an example of how atheism does not guarantee skepticism. I've met anti-vax atheists. I've met 9/11 truther atheists. There are so many things we have to consider beyond the labels that we throw out. And so, when he was speaking in those generalities, I found myself saying, have you interviewed the millions upon millions of people that you are pretending to represent? Because I'm not sure they would all line up with the cookie cutter that you are lining them into. Would you like to take another call, Dara?
Yeah, sure thing. Let's do it.
Let's do the theist call. 908. I've got John out of New Jersey. John's pronouns he, him. I think John is with us. Are you there?
Yeah. Seth, how you doing, bro? This is John. I'm a believer. How you doing? I just have a question for you, Seth. Thank you. Everybody treats me good on the line. They don't attack me, I just have to get something off my chest. Life is stranger than fiction. I deconstructed and I deconverted from fundamentalism. I still believe I'm a theist. I believe in God. I just don't want anybody controlling my life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you still there, Seth?
I'm listening with great interest,
okay.
my friend. So you were a devout Christian, like a fundamentalist Bible literalist Christian?
Yes, I was. Yes. And I'm having a problem again with the independent Baptists. They think I'm going to hell because I'm a Christian. I like going to the beach. I go to the movies on occasions. I like shooting pool. I like having a couple of cans of Budweiser. And they think I'm going to hell. Yeah. So they think that I'm not a true believer, and they labeled me as a progressive Christian. I'm not sure what that means exactly. I don't. But they think I'm going to hell. Is that? Are you familiar with that? A progressive Christian? Okay.
Yeah, I am. I mean, what I see is, wow, this is a whole other show, John. But
I know.
I think that it is more and more common for people to walk away from the hardline biblical edicts of Christianity.
Yes.
Right? Because it's not a good fit for them. All right. They think that Jesus had lots of good things to say. Perhaps they pray. Maybe they still believe in heaven. They enjoy the framework of Christianity for their earthly lives, but they don't want to judge gay
Yes.
people, and they don't think that you're going to go
Not
to
at all.
hell for
Right. I
having
agree.
some. Okay, all right. So what I see in you is what I see in a lot of people, like my friend Amanda Tyler at the Baptist Joint Committee and others. Their Jesus would never judge homosexuals. Their Jesus would never send anybody to hell. They see Christianity as a net positive, but they've had to walk away from some of the harder line stuff, and theirs is more of a love everybody kind of religion. Would that be you?
Yes, that's me. That's me exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So
what's
I get
your
labeled through all of that. Okay,
That's all right.
Seth,
That's all
I
right.
have
I
a
mean, I'd
question
take
for-
a moderate Christian over a fundamentalist any day of the week. But where does that bring you now? Why are you here, and what can we do for you?
Okay, Seth, I have a question about energy and like your personal belief and belief of a lot of atheists. It's a scientific fact that energy cannot be created or destroyed. That's been proven.
Yep.
Yeah, the
Okay.
abiogenesis argument, it's matter, I believe, that cannot be created or destroyed. Where did the first cell
Okay.
come from? If it cannot be created or destroyed, there must have been some sort of a divine hand that brought it to existence. That's the argument often that is made.
Okay, my question is, since like when we die, we pass away. Now, since energy cannot be destroyed, do you believe that like our energy would go to another created being, like reincarnation, or a tree, another living creature, or is it like a perpetual motion thing? Is that what like a lot of atheists believe, or?
I like that line. We are the universe expressing itself for just a little while. Carl Sagan, we are all stardust kind of thing. I mean, I produced a video and released it just recently called The Story of You. In fact, you should make a note to go look it up on YouTube. It's worth 12 minutes if you want to know how I feel about it. It's called The Story of You. It's on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And it speaks about how the elements,
Okay.
the Thinking Atheist channel, The Story of You.
Okay.
And it is about how the elements of the singularity, the elements produced by the Big Bang and the seeding of the cosmos, these elements exist in us. We are star stuff. And I believe, I have no reason to not believe that when I die, all of the elements in my body and all the matter in the cells and everything that makes me what I am now is going to be incorporated then into other things. And finally, when the sun goes supernova and the earth is gone, I will be then reincorporated back into stardust, into, the cosmos itself. I don't see any other reason to, I don't see any reason to believe that there is I'm going to be in another body, or I'm going to achieve nirvana, or go to some Xanadu in the sky, anything like that. If something like that is demonstrated, I would certainly want to know. What do you think happens?
I don't know. I just don't know. I'm just curious about like.
It's a fair answer.
You make sense though when you talk. I believe that our energy, being a Christian, will be in paradise. I don't believe in a literal hell where the fire's going to burn us for eternity. That I don't believe in. And that's why a lot of the Baptists think I'm a heretic, because I don't believe in that.
He had talked about, I'm going to give it to Dara in just a second. He mentioned Hitchens. By the way, Hitchens on abortion, I think his words were he was squeamish on the subject of abortion, but I think you're right. I didn't hear him speak a lot about it. This idea that, someone had asked him after he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, what if there is a heaven? What if you die and you wake up? And he winked kind of at the camera and he said, well, I rather like surprises. So the truth is that I told Natalie, I'm like, if something ever happens to me and there is another plane of existence and I end up there, and look, here's a double wide trailer and I've got my dogs, all the dogs I've lost in the world are with me and all these other things are going on and I see it's there, then I'll hang out and wait for you, baby. I'll let you, I'll try to send you a sign. I would want to know that, I'm not threatened by the idea that there's an afterlife, but I myself have seen no evidence of a heaven. I've seen no evidence of reincarnation. And honestly, rather than cheat me out of the joy and the urgency of this existence, it's actually made it more amazing, because now I think, holy shit, I'm on the clock. These minutes will never return. I've got to make the most of it because it may be only once around. Dara, you want to weigh in? I'm just I'm one of those guys who gets excited when I talk about how I'm less afraid of death now that I don't believe in heaven, which is jacked up because it's opposite of what you would think. Do you have any thoughts to add?
Yeah, at risk of trotting all over the arguably beautiful and splendid exchange you guys just had, my favorite response to this question is the one that Bertrand Russell famously gave. I think that when I die, I shall rot. And that is it.
Oh.
So that's not a very pretty answer. It's not the
thanks,
answer that...
thanks, Dara. Wow. It's hugely inspiring.
I've got
goosebumps. Really. Wow.
I'm
teary-eyed. No, really.
It's not an answer that people love to hear, but given the facts as I understand them, I see no reason to think otherwise. I am, as far as I can tell, and we're not going to solve the problem of the hard problem of consciousness here, but as far as I can tell, consciousness at the very least is very heavily correlated with the brain. And as far as I'm aware, upon death, the synaptic firings and the electric signals and so far, and everything that's going on in the brain, that ceases. It comes to an end. So I have no reason to believe that my life will continue after the moment of my death. And that's fine. I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not doing this to belittle you or to talk down to you or to patronize you, John. I assure you that what I'm about to bring up, I bring up because I find it to be beautiful and profound. I absolutely love The Lion King. I love The Lion King. It's one of my favorite animated films, if not one of my favorite films of all time. And Mufasa very famously says to Simba, when Simba is still a cub, basically, that we eat the antelope, but when lions die, their bodies then fertilize the grass, and then the antelope eat the grass, and then the lions eat the antelope again, and we get this like beautiful circle of life, essentially. That is the most I can offer in terms of comfort, but it's cold comfort for anybody who's interested in what might be referred to as a kind of subjective continuity, or what some people might call subjective immortality, where the I, the experiencer that is you, continues in some way. I see no reason to believe in subjective immortality. There is no good evidence for it. This talk of energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed and so on. It's not that the elements of your body are going to continue in the form of you in another life. The elements of your body do continue in some way. It's just that they continue in the way that Simba was told by his father Mufasa. I will become fertilizer for the ground. The worms will eat my body. And so, again, this is pretty cold comfort for anybody who's interested in meeting grandma in heaven.
That's truly inspiring, Dara. Okay, hang on. So, John, I want you to go watch my videos called "The Story of You," and then I want you to go to Dara's channel.
Story of You.
His video is titled "You Will Rot in the Putrescence of the Abyss." It's really, really moving.
You guys are sharp as nails.
You're going to love it. So
I gotta say one last thing. Last thing. It would be remiss of me not to say this one last thing, John, and then you can have the final word. I do, however, agree with Seth's point about how my belief on this actually enriches your life. It's apparent to me that human beings, one way we tend to value things is based on rarity. Now, we value things in other ways as well, but, one of the reasons we value gold, of course, there are other reasons, but one of the reasons we value gold is that it's quite rare compared to other precious metals like silver, for example. Now, again, there are other reasons we value it because of its utility in electronics and so on, but one of the reasons we value it is rarity. Well, what I would say is, if indeed I'm correct that there is no afterlife, if that turns out to be the case, and the evidence certainly seems to point that direction, well then what could be more precious than a life when you only have one? And as Seth put it, this creates urgency. My life became better when I became an atheist. I'm not going to, lie and pretend that I savor each and every second as though it were my last. That would be disingenuous. But what I will say is that every now and then I'm filled with a sense of urgency. Whenever I don't want to get out of bed because I feel depressed, or wherever I'm feeling lethargic and I don't want to get off the couch, every now and then a thought will occur that says, you've got one life, buddy. You can spend it on this couch or in this bed asleep, but you've got one life. Don't bloody squander it, because your days are numbered. You just don't know who's going to be here tomorrow. So atheism can actually enrich your life. It can create a sense of urgency. It can create a sense of appreciation for this life. Whereas if the contrary is true and we get an infinite heaven afterwards, that renders this life but a waiting room, as far as I can tell. I think it cheapens this life. If I've got infinity after I die, well, then who cares if I accomplish my goals on this mortal coil? This is just the blink of an eye. What's 80 years, if I even get that many years? What's 80 years compared to an infinity in heaven, right? So far from the dour and depressing picture that theists will sometimes present of atheism as this hopeless, nihilistic, pointless existence. Go and speak to atheists. Does Seth strike you as an unhappy fellow? He's full of the rigor and richness of life. He loves what he does. We were talking a moment ago about the tour that he's doing, where he's going to go and speak to audiences around America, and you could tell by the way he speaks about it that he's animated, enthusiastic, and happy and fulfilled in his life. And so am I. And I'm here tonight, and I get to sit and share the stage with Seth, and I get to speak to lovely people like you, John. And life is great, and I feel that way despite the fact that I believe it's going to end, and when it ends, I'm gone, and that's it. But anyway, I'll shut up because I've said a lot.
I'm going to give you the floor,
I did
John.
say
I can hear you were on the edge of your seat, my friend. Do you have any thoughts you want to follow up with?
I'd just like to say you guys are sharp as nails, man. You're really fun to talk to. You make people feel good, and I'm a believer, so. If a Baptist heard me say that, then they really think I'm going to hell,
No, look, what I appreciate about you is what I appreciate in anybody who is prepared to make their life the journey. So what you could have done is said, I'm unmoving. I refuse to budge. Even if some of this stuff doesn't jive with me, I'm going to remain a hardliner. But instead, you're thinking, well, this doesn't work for me, or I don't agree with that, or I don't want to be this. And you've made the decision. I'm not going to embrace that. I'm going to lean into better ideas and ideals. I want to be a better person. That represents my values. Well, that's the journey, man. And I think that's what we want for everybody.
It is.
And I would keep kicking those doors open. I would keep peering around those corners to find out if maybe there are other steps ahead of you. I don't know where they will take you. Whether they take you out of your religion or into a different expression of your religion, I do not know. But the fact that you've given yourself permission to actually take the road and move forward and do it on your own terms is something that a lot of people don't do. They don't give themselves that permission. And I find it amazing and inspiring. So you made my night, John. I appreciate you letting us know, and all my best. Let us know. Call us back in 6 months or a year and tell us where you're at, because I'd be curious. Okay.
Okay, you guys are cool. All right, thanks for talking to me, Seth. You take care of yourself. I wish you the best health and a long life.
Go have a beer.
Have
2 beers. All right, we're buying. Hell, he's Irish. Have 3 beers. I'm just saying. Thanks for calling, John. Is that a myth about Ireland and beer, or is that something you just tell the tourists?
There's a very serious problem with alcoholism in Ireland. Make no
Jesus
mistake.
Christ. I'm trying to keep it light. Right. I'm talking about the beauty of expression in the cosmos, and you're like, you will rot in the ground. Thanks, John. I hope you're inspired by that. Hey, go have a drink. We have a tremendous alcoholism problem in Ireland. I'm a quiver.
Seth, I don't have many friends. We'll put it that way.
Oh yeah, just okay. Well, I'll be yours. But I may have to. Yeah. No, you make me. Actually, I listened to you talking about the. It sounds a little bit like a Hallmark movie when we speak about the one life thing and the preciousness of it. But actually, you expressed it so freaking well. I always like to say that. People are like, well, if you're not going to live forever, why bother? Which, in a weird way, made sense when I didn't think about it, and I was a believer. And now I'm like, if you listen to a beautiful piece of music, it has a final note. It will be over. Is it not beautiful? If you eat a delicious meal, there is a final bite. Should you not enjoy the meal? This idea that something has to be forever to have value, to me, just sounds crazy. And you just articulated that so well. So
I thought Ricky Gervais put that really well, where he said, if you... Oh, sorry, did you just take another
No.
call?
I'm going to put him on mute. Stick with me, Darius. What did Ricky Gervais say? Go ahead.
No, it's okay, Seth. I can tell you later. I would prefer to prioritize the call. Never mind. It's okay. It's all good.
I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm a little...
No, not at all.
Darius. Oh, my God. There is so much background noise. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm at work right now, so just let me know if the background noise is too much. I could just, let you all know my topic, and y'all could take it off air. But yeah, I'm at work right now. I'm loading up my truck.
Let's try it. Go ahead. What's your comment or question?
So basically, I just wanted to get y'all's opinion on how some bad groups that we, generally label as bad, like Nazis or Klansmen, they get treated as bad groups, you know what I'm saying, because of their bad ideas and what they stand for. But certain groups, such as a lot of such as I'd say all the Abrahamic religions, they get this like special treatment even amongst atheists or even amongst secularists. And I just want to know, like, why do y'all think that is? Is it because they've been around for so long and people have grown accustomed to them and they kind of ignore their bad ideas, or what do you guys think it is?
I may have to. Let's answer this off air. There's so much noise, and thanks for your understanding.
Okay, got it.
And all right. Well, I appreciate your patience on hold. I'm sorry we couldn't continue with you here, but it's a bit much, and I think you understand. So let's talk. Thanks for calling, my friend. Is he speaking about how we tend to other groups or overgeneralize? I've seen.
I think
some
if
people
we summarize.
No.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Seth, go ahead.
No. I want to hear because you may have put those puzzle pieces together where I have not. What do you think was?
I think
saying?
the question was. I think the question was, why do we have such a bad attitude about Nazis, whereas we're perhaps more willing to give other groups like soft gloves? Like, why do we treat Christianity differently to how we treat Nazism? Why do we treat certain groups better than others in terms of their social acceptability in society and so on? I think that was the question.
Would that be a proportional response to the toxicity of the ideas and the groups promoting those ideas? Like if someone,
I think
if
so.
someone has an idea that is more benign, let's say it's my flat Earth, and someone over here is a white supremacist who has dehumanized entire cultures of people, those to me have to be dealt with proportionally. And one is going to be much more toxic and destructive than the other. I think that's a fair response. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's because human beings, as far as I can tell, and I don't know if the ethical theorists in the audience will react negatively to this or not, but I don't think it's that controversial an ethical claim. I think human beings are kind of intuitive utilitarians, and we tend to evaluate things based on consequences and how serious the consequences are. And I mean, Nazism created the Second World War. It resulted in the deaths of 65 million people, I think is the sum total of the Second World War, as well as the death camps, Auschwitz, all the rest of it, right? So if you're running a utilitarian ethic in your head, Nazism is going to stick out like a sore thumb as something that needs to be resisted, something that needs to be gotten rid of, and something that, we just shouldn't have, full stop. Whereas, let's say, I'll use a UK example, an Anglican Christian, somebody who goes to the Church of England. I mean, there's a running joke here in the UK that the local vicar, Anglican priest, vicar, preacher, whatever you want to call them, that they're just atheists, right? That's how inert Anglicanism can be, not in all its forms. There's definitely some pernicious ideas in there, no question. But your average Church of England goer is going to be basically harmless. And so the idea that we would attribute equal rejection or equal animosity to Church of England goers and Nazis would be ridiculous if you're just running the utilitarian calculus in your head, because the negative consequences of one far outweigh the negative consequences of the other. So I think that's the answer. It's a strange question. Perhaps I've misunderstood the question and Darius actually had something else in mind. But if indeed my understanding of the question was correct, I think that kind of explains why we treat one more, seriously than the other. But yeah,
I find myself more and more interested in tribes, tribalism, in-group biases, etc.
Yeah.
And this idea that we can be guilty of generalizing or over vilifying. Here's the one that I see is like when people go after religious people, and I've seen atheists who are just cruel. Religious people are mentally ill. It's the
Yeah, yeah.
socially accepted mental illness, which, by the way, is wrong, and it cheats the genuinely mentally ill. Um, where they talk about how stupid they are and how they're all Nazis, especially those who are Republicans, who are conservatives. So what they do is they speak in this term where they're like, okay, well, let's say there's somebody who they don't like Trump, but they're going to vote because they believe abortion is murder. So they've just become a single issue voter. They try to live a good life, but they've rationalized it in that way. Well, that person, in the eyes of some, well, now you are essentially voting against the rights of women. You are then enabling a sociopath to go and declare war on democracy and decency. He quite likely has white supremacist ideas. Certainly the white supremacists think he's a racist. And we've got Nazis in the streets. The neo-Nazis are out there. Therefore, all Republicans are Nazis. And this person here is a Nazi. They're all Nazis. And this is something that people tend to do. It's a very interesting in-grouping and out-grouping. It's the death of nuance. It's the death of consideration. And it also cheats the idea that there are many, many, many good people who have compartmentalized very, very, very bad ideas. This idea that everybody who is a believer is an idiot or a Nazi or any of these other things. Not only is it factually wrong, it cheats any opportunity we have to try to express our humanity, to connect, to change minds, to try to improve the world. I wasn't a Nazi when I was a believer. I wasn't an idiot. I wasn't mentally ill when I was a Christian. I was a straight up Reagan conservative, Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, Ann Coulter, love it or leave it, flag waving, creationist Christian. This idea that I was all of these pejoratives that they throw everybody's direction, I was somehow less than human. I mean, don't tell me that atheists are immune from this type of reductive superiority complex. We certainly can be, because it's a human thing. And there are some who think that engaging people who are doing real harm, that having face-to-face time with them, trying to de-escalate, trying to expand the arena of ideas, to try to produce the crack that lets in the light, they think that's a cheat. All you can do is punch a Nazi and they're all Nazis. I just monumentally disagree. I think people can be the perpetrators of harm, but also be the victims of indoctrination and bad ideas. They can be the victims of harm. And in a nuanced world, all of these things must exist in the same space. And so I guess what I take away from his call is this call of my own to let's try to not cram everybody into a single label. Let's not put them in a box and try to crush the box, because people are complex. They have backgrounds, they have families, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have problems, they have quirks, they may have illnesses. Who knows where they're coming from? But this lack of interest in all of those things really alarms me. Dara, do you have any thoughts on that? Am I just a softy liberal on that score? Or keep me honest, because there are people who are like, well, this is part of the problem. Because Seth is now an enabler of horrible people. And I don't think humanizing people is enabling. I just think it's humanizing. Go ahead. What are your thoughts, brother?
No, again, we are in violent agreement. I mean, look at the beautiful conversation that we just had.
Agreement. Yes.
look at the beautiful conversation we just had with John. Was that his name?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, people say that theists are this, that, and the other thing, and like you said, atheists are just as guilty as other groups can be of in-grouping and out-grouping and engaging in hostile rhetoric and so on. And so, yeah, not all theists are stupid, not all theists are idiots or what have you, and not all theists are hostile and unpleasant. We just had a beautiful conversation with John, and, the next call could be a conversation with a theist, and it might go down like a lead balloon. Who the hell knows? People come in all shapes and sizes. And, yeah, I would echo your sentiment of just, trying to treat people as individuals, basically, and not assuming too much about a person just because they self-identify with a particular label.
And I understand his frustration, but I saw Brent in the scrolling comments. He says there's no reasoning with bigots. Brent, I was a bigot. I was I was a bigot. My best friend came out to me as gay. We'd known each other for 10 years. I had no idea. When he came out to me as gay, I was a bigot. I didn't accept that. I rejected it. I rejected him. We didn't speak for a year. I was reasoned out of my bigotry, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that you can't reason people out of something they didn't reason themselves into to begin with, I reject. And they may have just been using bad reasoning, but I'm saying that this idea that we just write them off, right? And we say, they're all you can do is crush them. I think that's laziness. I think it's dismissive.
Agreed.
I think it dehumanizes. I think it cheats any opportunity. That's not how we fix the world, is all I'm saying. And as someone who was rescued and reasoned out of bad ideas, I'd like to be a poster child for, a better approach out there. I don't think that's pie in the sky, man. I don't think that's kumbaya with Nazis. I think, maybe we can exist without having to throw punches at each other or destroy each other utterly. Maybe if we can sort of make a point of contact with shared humanity, that rescue is possible, right? So that's a whole other show. Who got me on that tangent? I think I may have done it to myself. I've got Bill out of New York. Bill, atheist, pronouns he, him. Bill, are you with us?
Seth, I'm with you. How you doing?
Lo, we are with you always, Bill, even unto the ends of the earth. What's on your mind? What do you want to speak about today?
Well, first of all, I want to throw out to your guest there. I started watching his channel, and I almost had to start binge watching. It was so hilarious. So thank you, Dara, very much. And
my pleasure, Bill. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
And Seth, I watched your deconversion video, and it got me on my path. So thank you, my brother.
What I want real fast? I'm sorry. I know you came with a subject on your mind, but path out of religion, fundamentalist faith. What'd you get out of?
Yeah. You talked about how you deconverted and what caused you to deconvert. The guy's bad motorcycle accident and all that. And I watched that, and some other things were going on. And I watched Hitchens and some other people, and I was gone. So, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we're all encouraging each other. You did the heavy lifting, man. You did the hard work. Go ahead. Comment or question for the show tonight, my friend.
Well, I saw something on social media. I had to throw it up there because I was like, oh my God. It said, we don't need rainbow flags or drag queens in our classrooms. We need the 10 Commandments. And after the, face palm, I looked at that and I was like, how many people think they're actually flying a rainbow flag in a classroom along with the other 2 flags, or have drag queens in classrooms? But my thing that worried me was there might be some evangelical or something that sees that and thinks, oh my God, they've got rainbow flags in classrooms and drag queens and and it's like some of the stuff out there, if you don't have enough of a filter for it, you go nuts. I mean, and it's only getting worse. People trying to attack.
These are the same people. These are the same people warning the culture about child sex traffickers operating out of a Washington, D.C. pizza parlor's basement. And I say that twice, the basement of a Washington, D.C.'s pizza parlor, when there is no basement in the D.C. pizza parlor, and a guy walks in there with an AR-15 and shoots the place up, right? It is terrifying, but I think it's an example of the weaponization of fear, right? This is not exactly a fact-checking culture. So all you have to do is go and say, they're coming for your kids, and those who are primed to latch onto that are going to run with it. Dara, did you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I am a high school teacher here in the UK, and I've yet to see ill come to a child or something bad happen to a child as a consequence of being exposed to a rainbow flag. That might sound like a ridiculous statement. That's so stupid that I have to say that out loud in 2024. But unfortunately, there appear to be although we must keep in mind that social media amplifies the loudest voices. But there definitely appears to be an angry cohort of people who believe that LGBTQ plus signage or rainbow flags or what have you is a deeply pernicious problem that's going to harm their children. I don't understand the concern. I think it's another one of these moral panics. I mean, we do sometimes have LGBTQ plus imagery in the schools that I've taught in. Now, remember, we're talking about one person who's a teacher, so this is an extremely anecdotal subset. But if it's happening in my school, it's probably happening in other schools. Yeah, there definitely are. You know, when we have Pride Month and so on, you'll see in the communal area that a lot of the LGBTQ plus kids have gotten together and put up little post-it notes of their stories, and they've hung up beautiful flags and images, and they give their recommendations for LGBTQ plus books and films and things. And it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It doesn't do any harm. No kid is harmed by doing this, and I don't understand why somebody thinks it would be harmful. Do they really think, and forgive me if this is a straw man, but sometimes I wonder if this is actually their concern, do they really think that their child, who, let's say for argument's sake, is straight, let's say the child is old enough that they've had their sexual awakening and they're kind of aware of what their sexual interests are, so do they really think that being exposed to a rainbow flag is going to, quote unquote, turn their kid gay or something? Like, I just don't understand I don't get where they're coming from. I don't understand. Like, please, like, if either you, Bill, or Seth, if you can steel man their concern, please do, because maybe I'm just being an idiot. But I don't get it. No more than the teaching of Nazism. We teach about Nazism in history class, and yet there's no moral panic about kids being turned into Nazis in history class. Shockingly enough, you can be exposed to information. And by the way, I'm not comparing Nazism and the LGBTQ plus movement before anybody reads into that comparison. I'm making a very specific point here. Do people really believe that just by being exposed to the facts of something, that you can then become that thing? Because if that were the case, we'd have kids who are Nazis because of learning about Nazism in Nazi class. We'd have kids who are communists because they learned about communism in politics class and so on. I mean, what is the concern here? I don't understand why it's a problem to learn about other people that we share this planet with and what they actually believe and how they live their lives and what their nature is. I look, as far as I can tell, it's a moral panic, and I don't understand. But if you guys can give me a better sense of what the actual concern is, I would love to hear it. But I've got nothing. I'm puzzled. That's the second time.
I'm going to hand it over to Bill. Bill, what are your thoughts, my friend? What do you think?
Well, no, I mean, the flying flag, that's crazy. You know, let's treat people with respect and everything. And I don't know of any school that's got drag queens in classes. You know, usually to see a show like that, you have to go pay for it somewhere like in New Orleans or something like that. You know, you don't have that kind of thing running into classrooms. So, you know, it's just, it's ridiculous.
Just ask a question?
But
sorry, Bill, to cut across. I just wanted to ask one question. How are we defining, and forgive me if this sounds like an absolutely idiotic question, how are we defining the term drag queen? What is a drag queen?
Somebody that puts on a show for money that's either a woman dressed as a man or a man dressed as a woman. I would say theater myself.
Okay, so if I put on a dress and put on some makeup and went into a school and told a story to some kids, would that make me a drag queen, just in terms of this definition? Would that render me a drag queen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, at least not for me. For my, well, I don't know what Seth thinks about it, but no, to me, when I hear the same drag queen, I'm thinking about like a show in Las Vegas or somewhere where, you know, they're up there, someone's imitating, you know, Liza Minnelli or something. You know, a show like that, nothing like that's going to be going on in any kind of school classroom that I know about. Yeah.
Well,
the reason
I
ask,
interject,
sorry, Seth, you go ahead.
Is that I don't think, first of all, I don't think payment to being paid, I don't think a show is required. And I think, you know, if a man dresses in dress and makeup or whatnot, I would probably call that a drag queen. Maybe you could.
So would I. That's why I was asking.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dar.
But I wouldn't.
The reason I brought it up. Bill, just one moment. Forgive me, Bill. Just one other thing, and then I promise you can respond. The reason I bring it up is because that is, Seth and I are yet again in violent agreement. That is how I would define a drag queen. It's a person, or a man, for example, who dresses up as a woman, wears woman's makeup, and so on. And I am aware of examples where drag queens, according to the definition that Seth and I just agreed on, have in fact gone into schools and had drag queen story time. In fact, I was speaking to a parent in the UK here just recently whose daughter was in attendance at one of these drag queen reading time moments. And the panic coming from the right seems to be, you mean you sent that? And I'm sorry, dear listener, I don't say this to offend anybody. I'm quoting here, but they'll say things like, oh my God, you mean you let that quote unquote pervert into the classroom with our children? And really all that's going on here is that there's a man wearing a dress and has some makeup on and who told a story to some children. Now, I don't know about you, but a man wearing a dress isn't a danger to anybody. A man putting on makeup isn't a danger to anybody. But people sensationalize this as though an actual child predator was allowed to go into a classroom next to children, when in fact, and I can vouch for this as a teacher, before any person is allowed to enter our school, they have to, what we call in the UK, receive a DBS check. I don't know what the equivalent is in the US, but I guarantee you schools have them. They have to go through a police check to make sure that they're not some kind of predator or criminal or something of that nature. And those checks are incredibly stringent. So the kids are incredibly safe. What parents are freaking out about, these select group of parents, they're freaking out about this idea that a man is wearing a dress, basically. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it, that is a pathetic concern. I don't care what somebody wants to wear. Wear what makes you comfortable. Live your best life. Makeup, no makeup. Wear a dress if you like. I don't care what anybody wears. And it's infuriating to me that some people do. But anyway, Bill, those are some preliminary thoughts. I think, again, this is just another example of a moral panic. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's a moral panic. I was more concerned as far as someone that, let's say, is in a transition place, and gets picked out and ridiculed because of it. That would be my concern. If you know what I'm talking about.
What I, in my brain, have been coming back to is where the 10 Commandments displayed in a school is by definition exclusive, right? It is elevating one religion, one position, one culture over the others. Where if you see a rainbow flag, this is actually inclusion, right? It's saying not we want a world that looks like me. It's saying we want a world that has a place for all of us. And I think the messaging behind those symbols, they are diametrically opposed. They are certainly apples and oranges. They are very different things. And I find it not only interesting to see those who welcome and celebrate the symbols of exclusion and privilege. With the 10 Commandments, I'm struck by how many of the people who want it hung in schools and Supreme Court, in court, what am I trying to say? In courtrooms, thank you, in Capitol buildings, etc. If you were to ask them to name the 10 Commandments, most Americans could not give you even 5. Statistically, people surveyed who say they believe in the 10 Commandments are not able to name even half of them. The commandments in classrooms are not about the commandments themselves. This is a marking of territory for the purpose of consolidation of power, exclusion, and privilege. Now, there's no comparison between that and a rainbow flag that says love wins and there's a place for everybody. I think these are two totally different things, brother.
Oh, no, definitely don't. And then, which set of 10 Commandments? The first set or the second set? About boiling a goat.
Do not be boiling a goat in its mother's milk, Bill, because the Bible says it's
right. Yeah. You were talking earlier about, Trump and all that. I said, there was somebody back in 1932 that had this slogan, "Make Germany Great Again." And
that's a whole other show.
we all know how
all of the
that
parallels
turns out.
between Hitler-esque language and what's happening in the Trump camp. That's a whole other show. Bill, I'm going to move on, my friend. And you are much
All right.
appreciated. Thanks for calling and spurring this part of the conversation. Okay.
All right.
Bill.
Well, thanks very much, Seth. You and Darren, you guys have a great evening.
I appreciate it.
You too, Bill.
I have said this, and I stand by it. I would go into my savings account. I would find $1,000 in savings. I would pay it to give Donald Trump a basic 5-minute Bible quiz. I would pay, I'd take out a loan if I had to be able to give Donald Trump a basic Bible quiz. I'm releasing next week on my broadcast an actual Bible quiz show where we get into some of the more interesting tales. And then I tie a question into it, stuff like Ezekiel, and he's lying on his side by God's command for 430 days consecutively. And to make sure he doesn't move, God ties him up with rope, stuff like that. And Moses and the Pharaoh, and there's some wacky parts of that story, and the tax money that Jesus conjured, and all these crazy things. But even the basics, I'd like to sit Trump down and ask him just the basics about the Genesis creation story, about Noah's Ark, about Samson, about the Christ story from the manger to the crucifixion to the ascension and beyond. I'd like to just say, all right, give me 5 minutes. I want to see how much you know, and he is made to answer. I'd pay money, Dara. I'm just saying. I don't know. Just on my mind.
Yeah.
So
I'd be tempted to chip in.
By the way, and this is a great segue. Speaking of chipping in, your super chats are welcome. $10 plus. We'll get your super chat read on the air. We'll begin that very shortly, or you can just make your check payable to Save the Dara Family Foundation, which is a wonderful organization. But these broadcasts, they require a lot of resources, and the support of these broadcasts it's critical. It's important, and there is no too small gift. So if you enjoy what you see and what you hear, you benefit from, share it, spread it, like it, get the word out, and also donate if you can. $10 super chats, and we're going to read some of those in just a few. I want to say it's Jaron. I'll let you correct me. Jaron out of the Netherlands. Pronouns he,
Hello.
him. Jaron, did I say it right? Am I close?
No, you're wrong. It's Jeroen. Yeah.
Well, I received that.
You're not-
How do I say it correctly? How do I say it?
Jeroen.
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 I can't roll my
Jeroen.
R's. Dude, I was born in Tulsa,
Yeah.
Oklahoma. Right? You would have to actually split my tongue for me to be able to do it. It's a gift I do not.
Jeroen.
Oh God! So I'm just gonna go with it as about I can. Can I say Jeroen? Jeroen? Is that an insult to you, my friend?
No. That's perfectly
Okay.
fine to me. So.
Well, welcome to the show, and thank you for calling. What's on your mind, my friend?
First of all, hello from the Netherlands, the country of the stroopwafel. My question is actually, does populism and religious people, do they have is there a connection there?
Say it again for me.
Does populism...
Did you catch it, Dara? I'm not tracking. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Does populism and religion, is there a connection between those two groups?
Populism,
I think so.
and
religion.
Religion.
Is there a connection?
Yeah.
I mean, the very first thing that jumped into my mind was that populists will generally take advantage of the majority faith in a given society, because you'd be an idiot not to. So Hitler, for example, in many of his speeches referred to his divine mission and his belief in God and so on. And being a politician in 1930s Germany, you'd be an idiot not to say such things, because Germany was a devoutly Christian, had a devoutly Christian population, basically. And so, yeah, I think there's a connection there. There might very well be many other connections if you spoke to politics major, or even perhaps some kind of sociologist or something. But that was the very first thing that occurred to me. I guess I'm not entirely sure where you're going with that, Jeroen. Did you have anything to add to that, Seth?
No, I mean, I think that class systems or perceptions of class systems and class warfare have been weaponized by the elite, right? We don't have to worry about them fighting us. We just get them to fight each other. I think there's also a lean into authority figures by those who maybe feel left out or locked out. And so they find somebody who they consider to be an outsider figure, Trump, et cetera, who's going to go in and shake things up. And they're going to be given kind of the due that they feel they have been denied over their lives. I don't know. There's a lot to play. I'm not an expert on, socio or geopolitical issues. I don't know. I'm guessing that you, Jeroen, have a perception or perspective on this. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a member of a national political party here in the Netherlands. We had elections, a couple of months ago, and there's a populist party was the biggest party. We have multiple coalition politics over here, and 1 in 4 Dutch people who voted for that party. But a little bit of caveat in it. Most of the people in the Netherlands, not most, a little bit more than half of the Dutch people are actually non-believers. So, and if I look at the politics in the United States, most of them are Christians. And I was wondering, maybe it's a mindset of fear and being left out and being. Do you want to say something?
I'm reminded of that. It's a political cartoon where they show the two armies facing each other, and they have the exact same image, and you can either see a duck or a rabbit, depending on what your brain comes up with. It could be either. And it's like, there can be no peace unless the rabbit people believe in our duck god. And the duck people like, there can be no peace unless, the duck people believe in our rabbit god, or something along those lines. And I find that classes have been played against each other, and classes, I think, have found themselves with rallying points and attempts to be seen and to be heard, but they've also been heavily manipulated. And so, how do we open the tent so that we see a perception of all of us instead of factions set off against each other? This is tribalism writ large, and I think it's probably part of the larger question: how do we fix the world? And I simply do not have the answer to that question. The nature of your political system in the Netherlands, what is it that you want to accomplish as part of your political party?
Well, it's Green Left, GroenLinks, and it's a progressive social democratic party, and it's a little bit on Bernie Sanders-ish kinds of idea. We're pro-European, we are pro-secular, we are pro-choice, we're trying to cooperate with different groups within the society. But the political system in my country is in coalition parties. So we have about, don't correct me if I'm wrong, more than 21 political parties in the room, and they have to work together. And in the United States, you have a more like a binary party. The Republicans against the Democrats, and you also have the liberals and stuff like that. But the main biggest parties are those two, the Democrats and the Republicans, and that makes it a little bit more binary. And if I look at to the American peoples with their opinions and their arguments, it's binary constantly, and it's more fight for the power and more we are the good ones and you are the bad ones, and that's not a good development. Personally, I think, and I'm not saying that the political system in the Netherlands is the best or something like that, but it's better than the binary systems in also the UK and between the Tories and the other countries, the Tories and the
parties.
Yeah, the parties.
Well, I think that's fair.
So, do you see, Seth, for example, that it's better to have a coalition parties in more parties in the United States, or only two?
I'm not a fan of. It's weird. God, I'm going to open up this can of worms. People get angry with me because I say right now we're stuck with a 2-horse race. All right.
Yeah.
I think either you're voting for the stale sandwich or the shit sandwich, and for me, this is not even close. Yeah, it's just not even close. And so we have a legitimate problem that a 2-party system removes all other choices. It locks out the nuanced discussions that we have that other people might bring. It's probably more apt to guarantee that big money candidates are going to be the ones at the top of the tickets. And so, yes, I would like to see more options. I would like to see more common people, everyday people represented, etc. But we are at this moment in this terrible position where the perfect is the enemy of the good, or even the not great. And so I've got all these people on my own pages, and they're saying, I refuse to vote for a Democrat. I'm not even going to participate, or I'm going to throw out a protest vote. And I'm trying to communicate. You are now enabling a day one dictator who has declared war on the womb, who has declared war on female reproductive rights, women's rights in general, on LGBT people, on the United States Constitution, who has said he's going to weaponize the entire U.S. government against all of his perceived enemies, who is an absolute human rights nightmare, a sexual predator, grifter, etc. You are now saying, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to sit this one out and not vote. And what I'm saying is there's not a no vote. There is, I am either going to participate in the lesser of the evils, for lack of a better way of saying it, or I am going to enable the day one dictator, grifter, con artist, and predator. And people don't want to hear that. They say, well, the only reason we have the 2-party system today is because we've allowed it and because we continue to vote for one candidate or the other. And so the way to raise awareness is to vote for this third party, or to just say, fuck it, I'm not going to do any of this anymore. I'm not going to participate. I'm going to take my ball and go home. And this is supposedly some sort of a virtuous stand. And I think it is not. I think it's doing great harm. It's doing great damage. I would like to see more options. I'd like to see the whole damn thing restructured. Right now, this is what we're stuck with. November looms, and I think you do the best you can when you can. Right now, we have 2 choices. The house is on fire. I can say we're going to take a fire hose and try to put this out, or I can sit back and fold my arms and set my jaw and fantasize about a Xanadu of perfection that we might be able to build over here in a big wheat field. That's not going to really help anybody in the here and now. Thanks for calling, my friend. I appreciate your call very much. Okay.
Can I add one more thing about it? What you said?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There is a solution, Seth, and the solution is talk to each other. I talked to a lot of people who voted for, in my personal conviction, for the wrong party, a populist party, a right-wing extreme party. And I talked to those people. Why, how, what, and how can we work together to for the benefit not only for yourself but also for the rest of the society. And
you're ruined, though. You're ruined, my friend. In my home state of Oklahoma, there was a Republican politician who was in support of a border security bill that the Republicans have been screaming, let's tighten the border. We need greater security. And Biden wants open borders, and he wants chaos, just anarchy of people flying over and flooding over the borders. So this Republican comes forward and he supports a border bill. None of his colleagues would vote for it. No one would support him. And the reason was they wanted it to be a Republican initiative. They wanted it to fail. And then whenever their candidate supposedly won in November, then they could go back and they could do the border bill on their own terms and say it was a
I know.
Republican initiative.
I knew
These
what
are
was going
tribes.
on.
This is tribalism. These are warring factions, and it's about power. And until people get over this sort of bloodlust for power and this desire to crush all of these, the opponent, I don't see a solution in our future, my friend. Talking to each
Yeah,
other
but
would be an amazing thing. It would be amazing,
yeah,
but I don't see it
but
happening.
I'm talking about talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends who are different in their ideas, and what the politicians are doing. Well, if you're having those ideas, they're going to be how do I say that? Less and less being influenced in the society because they know they are having the bad ideas. That's why they are lying. If you have the good ideas, if you have the good ideas, you don't have to lie. If you have the good arguments, you don't have to lie. If you're talking to your next door neighbor,
there's a little bit of a delay. I'm sure it's because it's an international caller, because I simply am an impatient and potentially a terrible host. But I think that the larger thing with conversations is humanization, which takes me back to what we had talked about before. Can we chew on this for just a little bit off air after the call, Jeroen?
Sure.
And I appreciate you so much.
And my dog say hello to your doggies.
My dog was barking earlier. Sorry if I sent anybody through the roof with that surprise. It kind of shocked me as well. So thanks for calling.
No worries. My dog was like,
all right, this is a true story. I hope I didn't tell it on this show. And we're going to do the super chats here in a minute. So I've got a neighbor, and I am pretty much convinced he is probably he's a Trump voter. Okay. And he just gives off those vibes that he's probably a true blue Fox News Republican. Okay. So on paper, I see him and the hair on the back of my neck stands up and I start to just get pissed. You're in a cult. Sean Hannity's full of crap. Sean Hannity has said in a courtroom he's full of crap. Or Tucker Carlson, maybe it was Tucker who said it. No, I think it was Sean. This is a warehouse of horrible ideas. And then I start to just feel the emotion rise up in me. Well, we had a big windstorm come through and it blew down part of the fence in my yard, a privacy fence, and blew down part of the fence. And he came out and he said, "Hey, man, do you have any damage?" And I said, "Oh my goodness. Yeah, we lost some fence." He goes, "Look, I've got one of those little drones. Let me fly it over your house and make sure you didn't lose any shingles." "Oh, thanks, Don. Appreciate that." So he comes out. We take a good look. Looks like the roof's okay. And he says, "You know what? I've got the day. I'm going to get my tools. Let's put your fence back up." And in the heat of the day, we went out and he sat there and we drilled holes into the metal posts and reset all of those boards. And it took forever to fix the whole section. And he just came out. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't want any money. He wasn't looking for a favor. We didn't talk politics. We were human beings in that moment. And we had a moment of real human compassion and empathy and help and goodness and connection. If I had seen him on a bumper sticker, he would have been easy to write off. He would have been easy to just destroy on Facebook. He would be easy to meme. But if I see him face to face and we humanize each other now, you know what? If we sat at a table and started talking about our values and the issues that matter, now that we have established a human connection of help and empathy and compassion and neighborliness, I'm telling you, I'll bet those doors don't close. I'll bet we have good faith exchanges. I'll bet we may be able to expand horizons. I'll bet minds might be able to be changed. But it would have never have happened if I have crammed this guy into a box and crushed the box. And I guess that's why I keep pounding that drum so much. The internet's I feel like it's killing us. It's killing opportunities to see people liberated from bad ideas. I've said enough on the subject. Dara, did you want to add anything or disagree?
No, again, we agree. I'm quite kind of moved by your story. Actually, that's a beautiful story, and it gets to the heart of everything we've been talking about. Basically, treating people as individuals, not thinking about people as epitaphs or slogans. People are more than their ideological commitments, shall we say. When some people hear the word atheist, as we heard in one of our calls tonight, they associate a whole load of baggage with it. But if you actually speak to an atheist, you'd realize there's more to them than that one point of view on this one issue. If you speak to that Republican that you referred to, your neighbor, you discover that there's more to them than their republicanism, right? And so, yeah, we are in violent agreement yet again, Seth. And I'm going to remember that story.
Now, you realize,
That's a great
though,
story. I
Dara,
love it.
you realize there are some people who are going to say, well, Seth is ignoring all the damage that he's done and giving him a pass. And that's not what I'm saying. But you see the challenge.
You never
right,
said that.
Dara? Like,
you never said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You never said that. I was here. I heard the story. You did not say that. But there's the lack of nuance, right? So if I say something even vaguely positive about somebody, suddenly I'm a fiend because my every word about an individual isn't to beat them over the head. Like, people are more than just one view they have or what have you,
Well, I think there's
Nuance.
also the myth that if you don't slam somebody over the head with a sledgehammer, that you are weak. And I think strength comes in many forms. And this idea, there are some who say that we should go out and be lawless and destructive because, if you don't, you are weak. It's a half-assed response. And I just think that no strength expressed. I mean, Rosa Parks during the civil rights movement sat in a bus, or sat on a bench rather. And was that, it wasn't violent? Was it strong? Of course it was strength. There were so many expressions, I think, of that type of thing. And I just, that's probably is something I want to explore more in my own work. Dara, I should have you on my show sometime. You're just fun to hang with and talk to.
It would be an honor.
It
would be an honor.
I enjoy that. I'll have my
Anytime,
people
Seth.
contact your people. So I'm just saying.
Anytime.
Okay, well, we are at a point now, I guess, where we're going to alternate super chats. We will read them on the air. Are there, I don't know if there's still time to throw some in, $10 minimum to have your super chats read. These are wonderful ways to support the Hang Up and the Line, and you are much appreciated. Dara, I'll let you start off with the first one if you'd like.
Yeah, awesome. So $10, I apologize in advance if I butcher any of these names. So $10 from Sir Osis of Liver. Thanks to you both for all you do. Dara is a welcome voice in the community, and Seth, you are legendary. Matt's show is in good hands. What do you get when you mix a bad joke and a rhetorical question? That's very good. I like that.
I'm not
And
falling
by the way,
for
thank
it.
you very much.
Matt,
It's a very kind compliment to say that I'm a welcome voice. That really means a lot. It really and truly. Thank you.
Matt will be back, by the way. I'm doing my best to fill his chair, which, by the way, is warm and a little moist. It's strange, but he will be back. What was he doing tonight? I think he was at the spa, probably getting his legs sugar scrubbed as we speak. So you enjoy that, Matt. He will be returning soon. $10 from, oh my God, I hope it's Etienne Unson. And if I said that wrong, I beg for your forgiveness. Glad to see my favorite Irishman and Oklahoman. Sorry, Forrest. Yes, Forrest Valkai and I live about 20 minutes from each other. My favorite Irish accent meme is that one clip from RTE about a farmer who had his sheep stolen. I couldn't understand a word he said.
RTE, for those who aren't familiar, is the state broadcaster in Ireland. RTE is an acronym which stands for Radio Telefís Éireann, which is Radio Television Ireland, basically. But yeah, I know the meme he's talking about, and it really does drive home the fact that some Irish people are utterly incomprehensible. And I say that as a fellow Irishman. Oh, goodness.
I'm waiting for the next one, which has not yet appeared.
Awesome. So $9.99 from Daniel Rowe Bless. Thanks for the show, gentlemen. It is my pleasure. It's an honor to be here, an honor to share the stage with Seth, and I've had a great time this evening. It's been a pleasure. The pleasure has been all mine, Daniel, but thank you very much for the super chat.
Does that count as $10? $9.99, or
Yeah, when you donate through mobile, it takes a cent for some reason.
Oh, I was going to say, maybe this is like Daniel's not governable. Like, I will not be told what to do. I'm going to subtract the penny and beat the system, because I kind of admired that. All right. $10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Lots of theists employ black and white thinking. Lots of human beings do this, my friend. Sam employed very, very white thinking. Whole screed about Christians founding this country. I was screaming on the bodies of those who were here. I'm interested always in this resistance to acknowledging the, for lack of a better way of saying it, the sins of our past. You can't love your country if you acknowledge the fact that Columbus, first of all, Columbus never set foot in the United States. He landed in the Bahamas. Secondly, he was an absolute monster. 3, we committed genocide. White people came in and essentially stole the land. I mean, to be able to acknowledge these things doesn't say we're guilty that all these things happened. We're saying we have to acknowledge that atrocities were done, and we commit ourselves to trying to right a wrong that has been done in generations past. And, I think history revisionism is part of white Christian nationalism. For them, it has to be that Columbus was a great and noble man, and that the founding fathers were all devout Bible believers, and the Constitution is essentially a religious document, and God was always on the money and in the pledge, and we are one nation under that God, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of the David Barton approach. If you repeat a revised history, if you say the lie long enough, maybe it will become true. It imprints in the mind of people. But I think honesty is important. And I appreciate you very much, Monkey from Typewriter, for your $10.
Is it my turn to read? Yes, it is. $10 from Jeff Cochran. I don't know. We discard Cochran. Ah, okay. Thank you, Seth. We discard falsified claims, and the continued discussion of unfalsifiable claims is a form of survivorship bias. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Hey, I guess this is a thing. They're always doing it on the show.
Yeah, I've been on it a few times. It's a thing for sure. So yeah, go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
By the way, at some point in the broadcast, don't you and I have to do that pose that everybody puts in the show thumbnail images, the graphics, where we're like, that kind of thing. You notice we're always in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, everybody. At some point, I think you and I have.
In terms of that last super chat, just before we read the next one, I'm not sure what they were talking about. Why we discard? They said we discard falsified claims and something about survivorship. Did you understand what they were talking about there, Seth?
I may have read it wrong. Maybe that was my own sort of what I've been thinking about. But I think what I was hearing was the oppression of those already existing on these lands before the United States was discovered, right? America was discovered when actually there had been people here for thousands of years. That's how I read it at the time.
Sure. Okay, I understand. Yeah. So
Next up on the super chats, $9.99 from yet another person who I will just say cannot be governed. Melody Kate said, "Live and love now, and if there is an after, celebrate. If there is not an after here, then you have lived well." Lovely stuff. Thank you, Melody, so much for sending it.
I couldn't agree more with Melody. Although, at risk of being just a little bit pernickety here, I have said this on the record before. It might bear repeating here. If it turns out that when I die, the God that is represented in the Bible is the true God, I don't think I'm going to celebrate per se. I think this idea that if there is an afterlife, it's automatically a good thing, I think is something that we need to push back against, because not all afterlives are created equal. Because if the God of the Bible, as he is represented in the Bible, turns out to be the real one, and I somehow inexplicably end up in heaven, or I end up at least being able to speak to this God. Well, if the Bible is an accurate representation, then all of my fellow LGBTQ plus, like brothers and sisters around the world, they're all going to be in hell because of the statements about homosexuality is an abomination, yada, yada, yada. I guess I'm going to hell as well for daring to be the fool who had said in his heart there is no God. And Seth is probably going to be there with me for being a fellow blasphemer and so on. So I'm not so sure it's an automatic celebration if it turns out that this is true. I don't know if I'm just being a bit obtuse there, Seth. What say you?
I think in the spirit of an after, as invoked by Melody, I see it as almost like that line from Harry Potter. Like, where are you going? On, of course. All I know is that if there is another existence, I would be curious about that. And a damn well better employ dogs. Like there need to be dogs whatever's going on. I want there to be dogs all around me. And if there are dogs, then it will constitute heaven. This will be my bliss. All right. But
I just want
as far as the Christian God.
I just want you to be there.
Well,
and I'll be all good.
That's a low bar. That's a low bar. Next up on the super chats. Oh, by the way, I want to say a massive, massive thank you out to Jess. Jess has been screening the calls, managing things, and being the glue, as well as Arden, to help hold all of this together. There were many gears in the machine who were not here in front of the cameras, and yet the show requires them. They are critical hands and faces and voices and minds and hard workers who help to bring this broadcast and everything on the line to everybody. So thank you so much for what you've done. Go ahead, my friend, for the next super chat.
Excellent. $10 from Wizard of Frobos. What is it like to believe? 70 years old, third generation atheist. Anyone have a concise answer? I don't know. I mean, you presumably have beliefs in certain things. It's like believing those things. It's just a proposition that you take as fact. Presumably, Wizard, you believe that you're listening to this podcast right now, or you believe that there's a table sat next to you, or that you're sat in your house or wherever you live. Presumably you believe that, I don't know, tigers exist and lions exist and so on. Being a believer was a lot like that. I just didn't distinguish between believing in God and believing in tigers. Those were both extant things. Now, the ramifications of those beliefs are different. As a believer, I felt a certain sense of comfort. I think that would be a fair statement. I felt a sense that I would see my loved ones again, and that felt comforting. I'm sure you know what it feels like to feel comfort, Wizard. Presumably you've been comforted at one point or another in your life. If you cried on somebody's shoulder or something like that, it felt a lot like that when I thought about the prospect of seeing my loved ones again. Right? So, I mean, there are definitely ways that you can get into the mind of what it might actually be like to be a believer. If only by proxy, you can get a sense of what those feelings might actually be. I don't know. What do you think, Seth?
I'd like to say in my own work that there are 5 guarantors. Oh, well, with exceptions, I guess they wouldn't be guarantors, but there are 5 features to religious belief: family, geography, ritual, community, and comfort. When I was a believer, my parents were Christian. I was so lucky to have been born in the right home, to the right faith, right? Raised in the right church. I had the structure that my religion provided. I was comforted that I would never die, and that I was important enough that the great God above would adopt me and send me on a divine quest, and one day I would have a mansion and all of those things. And I had people who had my back and validated me. It was a reductive culture, though, because high control religions kill curiosity. Why would I have been primed or prompted to look for an answer? I already had the answer. Why would I ask any questions? I already have the answer. And I remember, this weird naivety. I was an overconfident yet insulated bubble boy who thought he knew everything about everything. And when the truth came to light, when I finally woke up, I realized I didn't know anything about anything. And being introduced to the larger world was so much more satisfying, as messy as it is. People sometimes will say, Seth, would you ever go back into the Matrix? And I'm like, hell no. I would never want to go back there. I'm much more fulfilled and happy and satisfied. My life has more awe and wonder now. So, yeah, I mean, was I kind of smug and secure and simple in that way? My thinking certainly was. I did have a feeling of safety and community, but I've also found that outside. I never needed religion for safety and community. Fortunately, I have lovely people like you, Mr. Wizard. Next up on the Super Chats. $10 from BW Dingus, or BWD Ingus, or BWDI Ingus. I'm not sure exactly, but I think Dingus is not an accident. I think this may be a purposeful part of the moniker. Thanks, Seth and Dara, for a great show. Well, thank you for watching and for the kind words. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. $10 from Unclean Unicorn. That's a weird name. Why did I read that and get a sexual connotation? Dirty unicorn. I think that says a lot about me right there. Anyway, the Unclean Unicorn writes, a presidential protest vote is not the vehicle for change. We need public referendums on ranked choice voting. Yeah, that's interesting. I will admit, I'm not an expert on American politics. I do understand that you guys have basically a dual party system. We don't quite have a dual party system here in the UK. There are, in fact, more than two parties, but the way Parliament runs is that you have the leading party and then the opposition party. Every now and then you might have a coalition, and echoing our conversation from earlier, Seth, I would be in violent agreement with those who say that party politics is actually a rather pernicious thing. It doesn't appear to be working very well. It actually just plays to all of that tribalistic thinking that we were talking about earlier. I was actually I will admit to the caller from the Netherlands, Jeroen, I think it was, I was feeling feelings of envy when he described this parliamentary system where all of the parties have to sit in the same parliament, and there might be 21 parties, he said, and they have to kind of arrive at a consensus despite the fact that they are all going to have different political points of view and so on. I felt quite envious of that system, because I feel like the UK has gone off the cliff with things like Brexit and so on in recent years. And I feel like the US has its own set of problems in relation to tribalism as a consequence of Democrat v. Republican talking points and so on. And so, yeah, I think maybe this super chat is on the money here. Perhaps what the United States actually needs is a change in how the political system operates. But I say that as an outsider and someone who's not intimately familiar with the situation. Would you be in agreement with a change to the voting system in the United States, Seth? Is that something that you think would be a good idea, or would you be happy to stick with the existing system?
I think I would like to see a total restructuring of how we politic in this country. I'd like to see an abolition of the Electoral College. I've seen there are some places that make voting mandatory for all adults. I go back and forth on this because part of me thinks we've already seen the damage done by people who think that the earth is flat and that there are trackers and vaccines and that Hillary Clinton is drinking the blood of babies out of that DC pizza parlor, etc. These people actually do vote. How much more of that would we get if mandatory voting was part of the package? What would a system like that look like? I simply do not know. But I look with despair at what we have. I'm not convinced it's fixable. The only thing I know is that we simply cannot give up, because I think that's what the enemies of human rights, the enemies of democracy and decency want us to become: exasperated, throw our hands up, give up, and then we concede. And if we concede, they win. And I think that's just unthinkable. We have no choice but to press on. That's all I got, brother. That's all I know.
Yep.
I've got props $10 and a sup, everyone. Doing well. Thanks for the super chat. Very kind of you.
Sup. $9.99 from Secular Humanist. Magic Skeptic and Seth, I love both your contents. Here's some money for a beer. I don't drink, but I do appreciate the offer. Perhaps I'll use it to buy a bottle of water.
I don't drink either.
No, I don't. Do you not drink?
Look, people do not believe me. I'm 56. I have never been drunk in my life. I'm like Penn Jillette. I have no idea what it is like to be drunk. And I'm terrified.
I can't say I've never been drunk. I've definitely been drunk, but I don't drink. It's not because I have a problem with alcohol or anything. It's just I don't like it that much. I drank when I was in university, the old cliche. I went to university and I got drunk like everybody else did. But it's expensive and I don't enjoy the taste that much. And to be perfectly honest, I prefer to just have a cheap meal and a can of Coca-Cola or something. You know, I'm one of those people. I'm not interested in pubs and clubs and all that sort of thing. I'm a nerd. I prefer to go to the cinema and watch a movie. I'm just not interested in alcohol. It's just not for me. It's not my thing. An expensive headache is all it seems to be.
Like a sweet wine. I have sipped a sweet wine, but it has to be almost like candy. I do like the taste of Fireball, cinnamon whiskey. I think that's delicious, but I've heard that's dangerous. Beer to me just smells like feet. I don't want anything to do with beer.
Yeah, I agree.
I just like, oh my God. And then if you talk to Aron Ra, who has forgotten more about beer than I will ever know. We were at a convention was it Kamloops up in Canada? And he was drinking a beer called the Backhand of God. If you have a beer question, Aron is your guy. And and also as far as the drunk thing, I think some of it is I fear a loss of control. What happens, Dara, if I overdo it and then I wake up naked at the zoo? Right. This is the kind of concern that I have in my brain. And so to prevent that, I just drink coffee and diet root beer instead.
I'm not sure why you would wake up. I get why you would wake up naked, but I'm a bit concerned that you went to the zoo then. I think all you've done there is give the Christians some ammunition. Claims of bestiality and the like.
Have ye not relations with the unclean thing?
Dirty, sinful atheists. Fornicators. I just love the zoo, don't you?
Anybody else on the super chat list before we put a punctuation mark on the end of this? I've got Matt Cracks Wise, $10. Seth, something to practice for later this summer. Tirona. They're all three equally phonetically punctuated. There's only one T in Toronto. Toronto? Tirana. Oh, I see. Forgive me. Well, first of all, I think it would be a punctuated middle syllable there, but Tirana. That's not right. That's not so much you say Toronto. Tirana? What is happening, Matt? I don't understand.
I got nothing.
Tirana? I don't have.
I'm still at the zoo. In my mind.
I'm I'm googling that when the show is over. Next up, go ahead.
$9.99 from Melody Cade. There is no God. Sorry. If there is after it. Sorry. If there is after it could be anything. From joining the breeze to being rain, if a Christian God is there, he can bite me. There is no God. Sorry. I mean, look, let me just say this in relation to the first sentence. I'm one of those atheists who thinks it's not very wise to go around saying the hard claim that there is no God, full stop. As far as I can tell, the God hypothesis is unfalsifiable, which means no evidence can count against it, because the claim, a lot like Bertrand Russell demonstrated with his teapot analogy, if a claim is constructed in such a manner to make it impervious to investigation, Sure, that doesn't serve as evidence in favor of the claim, but the fact that you can't interact with it means that you can't disprove it either. And some people get frustrated by that, and I understand the frustration, but if we're going to be philosophically honest, and not every atheist will agree with this, but I just got to tell you my point of view here. Perhaps Seth will, we might discover, Seth, our first disagreement of the evening, I don't know. But if you're going to go out there and say there is no God, quote unquote, it's going to be T minus 30 seconds before any Christian, or more specifically a Christian apologist, ties you up in riddles, because that's a very, very difficult burden to meet. How do you go about proving the non-existence of something which allegedly exists outside of space and time, or is spaceless, timeless, immaterial, or what have you? How would you disprove even a deistic notion of God, and so on? You cannot appeal to the fact that you haven't seen it yet, or nobody has provided evidence yet, at risk of committing a black swan fallacy, so named because it is fallacious to assert that there are no black swans, simply because you haven't seen evidence for one. Of course, there could be one lurking in the areas that you haven't searched yet. And so I'm convinced that it's not very wise to go around saying that there is no God. But that's just me. What's your take on that particular point, Seth? Do you go around taking on the hard claim?
I think, was it Matt Dillahunty who likes to use the phrase, I'm not convinced? By the way, Matt Dillahunty, the normal host, will be back next week. He is tonight. He is busy. He's actually playing with the Austin Philharmonic. He plays oboe, and I didn't know if
I heard differently. I thought he was at the zoo.
Oh, he's naked at the zoo tonight. I'm going to take it a step further, though, Dara, and I think I will say that the Christian God does not exist. I don't say there is no God. I think you're absolutely spot on. This idea, this declarative statement, it just sets up a whole host of problems. Yeah. But I think we can look at these specific deities that have been posited by debunked mythologies, and we can get into the anti-science, the anti-history, hell, the anti-morality of the Bible, and it falls apart. That house of cards collapses, and we can say, well, the Christian God, we know this is bullshit. And I think that's fair. But yes, we totally violently agree that it's just walk in and say gods don't exist, there is no God. That's not a great way to approach it. We say, I'm not convinced, there has been proven no God, there is no evidence for a God. If evidence presents itself, I, as a creature of the evidence, would like to know that. But until then, I do not believe. Next up on the super chats. Oh, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, sorry. One last, sorry, Seth. One last thing. I'll put it this way: if somebody says that their God is a square circle, I can confidently say that God doesn't exist, because you've uttered a logical contradiction, right? But yeah, certain gods can be articulated such that they don't contain any logical contradiction, and so it's very difficult to go about claiming that God doesn't exist. And the Christian God might very well be a God that contains logical contradiction, depending on how it's defined. If you go for the triomni God, all-powerful, can he create a rock that's so heavy he can't lift it? We can probably rule out that kind of God. But, theologians have thought about this, and now they say that God is merely maximally powerful in order to avoid that particular logical conundrum, and so forth. So, yeah, as you say, Seth, and I'll shut up now, basically, it's a difficult road to go down if you're going to try and demonstrate the non-existence of gods more generally. But, yeah.
Experiments in Prebiotic Chemistry has donated or super chatted $10. Hey, Seth, don't you think that the fiscal state of the U.S. government is a disgrace? Without question. I think we're just bloated and wasteful and weird. And, I think we are irresponsible. I think we're reckless. I think we're myopic and short-sighted. And I don't know that it's fixable. It's weird, when I was that Jesus is a capitalist Christian, God is definitely free market. God's a free market capitalist, right? That used to be me. And any idea of collectivist values or social responsibility, especially in regard to tax dollars, the supporting of government programs for social services, etc. I was always like government overreach and socialism and oppression and etc. And I've totally rethought that. Now I'm really struck by how insensitive I used to be about people who are part of a culture, a society, a family, the human family, who are disadvantaged or suffering, and we just write them off and blame them. This America, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the land of opportunity. If you don't succeed, it's your own fault, kind of a thing. and we become very dismissive. And I think to myself, we got plenty of money for war. We got plenty of money for the military. We got plenty of money for all of these unnecessary things over here. And we seem to always be scrounging to pay our teachers. We always seem to be going, well, how do we help the poor and feed the hungry? And how do we, provide systems that help the mentally ill or those who are disadvantaged in our society? And we don't want to think about society. We don't want to think about the human family. I think we are a culture that has been taught the lie that America is an individual. And I think the whole system's completely fucked up. And I think it may be totally unfixable. So I think you and I agree. Forgive me for the diatribe there, but yeah, I think it's wrecked, so to speak.
It's my turn, isn't it? $10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Dara, if you think about an unclean unicorn and feel some way, maybe you're the problem. Yeah, you might be right. Unclean unicorns are your drag queens, eh? Oh, the chat just disappeared.
Is there a way to reverse that? Oh,
yeah, there we go. Unclean unicorns are your drag queens, eh? Both of you gentlemen are wonderful. I'm excited when I see you. Not as excited as I am when I see or talk about unicorns, that's for sure. Especially unclean ones.
I think we have a few left. Let's see what pops up on the screen next, and I'll do my best not to muck it up. $10 from Experiments in Prebiotic Chemistry.
Oh, wait.
I read that one.
Sorry.
Yes, I did.
added a new one that I missed to the list, and it changes everything. It's so annoying.
No, you're fine. You're fine. $9.99 from Sarah Christine, which sounds like a song. A great show. Thanks to Seth, Dara, and mods. Dara, please say specifically mischievous for us.
Specifically mischievous. Do you know what that's in reference to, Seth?
I honestly just think Sarah Christine wanted to hear you rap that amazing accent around those two specific words.
I mean, one of the last times I was on, I can't remember which time it was, people were having me read lines from Taken. Liam Neeson. I have a very particular set of skills. So yeah, I get it a lot.
Yeah, love it.
Oh,
love
God.
it. Anybody else on the roster? Okay,
this is the last one.
Is this for me, Seth? I'm terrible.
Yes,
I've got such a crap memory.
Yes,
$20. Thank you for such an amazing donation. That's awesome. From Catfish. I'm as mesmerized by Dara as I am by Seth's voice. I'll just take that as a compliment, Seth, I guess. Thank you very much.
It's been a lot of fun. I think you and I play pretty well off of each other. It's, for two people who met and then 5 minutes later we're hosting a show together, I think we did all right tonight. And hopefully the viewers and listeners feel the same way. And I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I did very much. So
I've had an amazing time, Seth. It's been an honor. I really mean that, by the way. I don't say that just casually or flippantly. It really is an honor to share the stage with somebody of your caliber. And I've been aware of your stuff for years, and you've done amazing things for the atheist community in terms of your atheist activism and so forth. So I can only hope that my presence here this evening was if I can just, I'm only hoping that I matched your level. That's my number one hope. But yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're very kind. I bring the style, you bring the substance. So again, we should take our violent agreement and buy a van, and we will go on tour together. I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks for the comments in the comments section. Thanks for the calls. And for furthering a conversation. I think these necessary conversations about the world we live in and the world that we want to live in. Let's try to remember to be human beings out there. Keep kicking. Try not to give up hope. And Matt Dillahunty and his co-host will return for the next edition of The Hang Up. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you later.
Like music.